Very good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Yeah, I think we can start with the second part of our conference. I'll just give you some technical information. My name is Stefan Xenger. I'm Secretary General of the World Wind Energy Association. Just some logistics before I hand over to our chairwoman for this, well, in Europe afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this 5th International Community Wind Symposium and Community Power Forum. We had already in the first session, we heard the results of 2 surveys in Germany and Japan, which presented the shares, I should say, of women in community energy in Germany and in Japan, both quite similar. Below 30% of community energy shareholders are women. And now we look forward to discussing the results with the panelists with you. This event is a public event, so it's not only those people who are attending the session here, but it's also streamed online on YouTube. So whatever you say, if you want to raise something, then please be aware that many people can listen to you. Be aware that others may also listen to you, what you say. We will also publish after the event a cut version of the webinar on YouTube so that it is accessible. With this, I have the pleasure now to hand over to you, Christina. You have kindly agreed the role of being the moderator of this session, which deals with main focus is on what community energy can do to increase social participation, in particular the role of women in community energy. And with this, I hand over to you, Christina. Christina, let me just briefly explain that you are not only a board member of the German Community Energy Alliance, but you're also on the project advisory board of this project. Christina.
Thank you, Stefan, very much for the nice introduction. And dear ladies and dear gentlemen, I'm happy to lead you through the next 1.5 hours with 4 remarkable women. They will give each 10 minutes input. It's going to be a colorful input from community energy practitioners to regulators. And after the presentations, we will have a question and answer session, Q&A session. And it's not only between the attendees or attendees to the presenters, but also between the panelists. You are welcome to get into dialogue. And please use the question and Q&A at the bottom or the chat to ask your questions. So much for the technicalities. And the first 2 inputs will be from Germany, 1 from Canada and 1 from Brussels. Unfortunately, our African attendee, Ms. Pam Onyanyo from Kenya, from Sky Energy, she had to cancel. So it means we will be very much focused on Europe and North America. And what's important, our presentations will last for 10 to 12 minutes, so we can have enough time for discussion afterwards. And I will give a little introduction to each presenter and before their session. First, we will hear from Barbara Rodi. She's in the Peace Promoting Energy Cooperative from Herford, Germany, and she will speak about the successful advancements of women in community energy. And she has not only knowledge in how to take care the sunlight turns into electrons and we use it in renewable energy, but she also knows how to support healing through neurosynapses, which allows the neurons to pass over the electrical signal to another neuron. With other words, she's a music therapist and also active in social movements for 40 years and in peace and anti-nuclear movement, which is very important nowadays, and support for refugees and so on. And she's in the, since 2011, she's the board of the Peace Promoting Energy Cooperative Hereford, a real practitioner, and they are committed to climate protection. And I would love to hear how how things work on the ground. So please, Barbara, you have to unmute yourself. It's still not. Maybe you can do it.
Das? Okay.
Excellent.
Ja, vielen Dank für die nette Einführung. Ich habe mich entschieden, auf Deutsch zu sprechen, weil ich doch im Englischen diese Fachbegriffe noch nicht alle so drauf habe. Ja, ich werde meine Präsentation jetzt teilen. Mal gucken, ob das klappt. Jawohl. Jetzt muss ich nur hier drauf kommen. Übrigens, ich fand es schade, dass ich den Vormittag nicht mitbekommen habe, aber ich bin meiner Tätigkeit als Musiktherapeutin auch noch nachgegangen heute und komme jetzt gerade von der Arbeit und freue mich hier jetzt ein bisschen was erzählen zu können. Vieles ist vielleicht auch selbstverständlich, was ich hier vortragen werde, aber ich finde es doch wichtig, sich das immer wieder bewusst zu machen. Das ist ein buntes Bild von unserer Energiegenossenschaft. Wir haben Kinder dabei, Jugendliche, Erwachsene, Rentnerinnen und Rentner. Und hier ist auch der Landrat mit dabei. Also ein ganz bunter Haufen. Und viele gemeinsam erreichen viel. Das ist auch so ein Motto von Genossenschaften. Und manchmal ist es auch so, ja, dass eine Frau alleine viel erreicht mit Unterstützung von vielen. Das ist unsere große Photovoltaikanlage, die wir letztes Jahr gebaut haben, beziehungsweise haben bauen lassen. Da sind wir sehr stolz drauf, dass es geklappt hat. Und es war für uns als Genossenschaft ein großer Schritt auch, wo wir alle auch viel gelernt haben und auch viele neue Mitglieder bekommen haben. Jetzt ist die Frage, wie fördere ich die Beteiligung von Frauen an Energiegenossenschaften oder auch Bürgerenergie? Ganz wichtig finde ich, dass man speziell Frauen anspricht für die Ämter, nämlich Vorstand und Aufsichtsrat. Inzwischen gibt es ja auch gesetzliche Vorgaben, die eingehalten werden sollen. Leider ist es noch nicht überall so der Fall. Aber die Zielangaben sind auf jeden Fall schon mal eindeutig. Dann ist es bei uns so, dass wir bei den Treffen auch immer darauf achten, dass anteilig die Redezeiten aller Beteiligten ungefähr gleich sind. Also das ist ja oft so, dass Männer länger und mehr reden als Frauen. Und gut, ich will diese Vorurteile hier nicht verstärken, aber es ist schon oft noch so. Wobei auch wir Männer dabei haben, die wirklich sehr strukturiert teilnehmen können. Durch strukturierte Sitzungen kann man auch die Beteiligung von Frauen fördern, ja, indem man eben gerade auf die Rednerinnenliste achtet. Dann sind wir eine Energiegenossenschaft, die sich an der Basisdemokratie orientiert. Wir hatten damals überlegt, was für eine Unternehmensform es gibt in Deutschland, um voranzukommen mit der Energiewende und sind dann schließlich bei der Genossenschaft gelandet, wobei die auch nicht ganz basisdemokratisch ist, aber schon doch uns am ehesten noch entsprochen hat. Dann ein wichtiger Punkt ist immer, gendergerechte Formulierungen von allen einzufordern. Da wird manchmal auch ein bisschen gemeckert, weil es doch oft umständlich ist. Aber auch da sind wir, denke ich, auf einem ganz guten Weg. Und als Vorstand oder Vorständin, wie auch häufig gesagt wird, versuche ich natürlich auch ein Vorbild zu sein in der Kommunikation, Leute ausreden lassen, nachzufragen, wenn was unklar war. Also da auch eben zu gucken, dass alle auch mitreden können. In unserer Unternehmensphilosophie, die wir einmal aufgesetzt haben, ist es auch erwähnt, dass auch nicht toleriert wird, wenn frauenunterdrückende Dinge passieren. Das finde ich auch sehr wichtig. Und natürlich ist es so, dass es auch ausstrahlt. Also ich selber bin auch so ein bisschen in der feministischen Bewegung aktiv gewesen, zumindest seit ich in der Energiegenossenschaft bin, habe ich da nicht mehr so viel Zeit dafür. Aber ich denke, das ist ganz wichtig, selbst auch davon überzeugt zu sein. Das zu den internen Möglichkeiten, das zu fördern. Und bei der Außendarstellung finde ich es auch wichtig, darauf zu achten, dass Frauen auf Fotos präsent sind, in Texten vorkommen und auch bei Veranstaltungen zum Beispiel moderieren oder auch Vorträge halten. Dann kann man natürlich bestehende Kontakte zu anderen Frauen nutzen. Wir haben hier im Kreis Herford auch einige Klimaschutzmanagerinnen, inzwischen auch einen Mann. Das ist auch eine ganz gute Möglichkeit, die Energiewende voranzubringen. Auch hier denke ich, in der Wirkung nach außen ist es wichtig, eben auch Vorbild zu sein als Gesamtgenossenschaft und eben zu schauen, dass Frauen auch immer mit auftreten. Dadurch, dass ich selbst in der Frauenbewegung auch aktiv war, kenne ich auch Frauenorganisationen, die ich immer wieder anspreche. Es gibt hier auch bei der Wirtschaftsinitiative eine Frauengruppe. Das sind so Möglichkeiten, einfach das Thema Energie auch bei denen anzusprechen. Manchmal ist es nicht so einfach, bei Kooperationspartnerinnen oder Partnern auf gendergerechte Formulierungen hinzuweisen. Zum Beispiel bei Verträgen ist es auch noch üblich, dass das alles in männlicher Formulierung stattfindet. Aber das sind so Dinge, wo man auch eben Bewusstsein schärfen kann. Und vielleicht als Beispiel die Bürgerwerke, ja, da ist es inzwischen auch ein Thema. Und anfangs war das ein bisschen schwierig, das da einzubringen, aber inzwischen ist es da auch selbstverständlich eigentlich, dass damit drauf geachtet wird. Ja, und als letztes, man kann natürlich auch aktiv das Thema erneuerbare Energien bei Frauen ansprechen, eben ein Bereich, der sonst mehr die Technik betrifft. Aber dadurch, dass wir alle Strom benutzen, alle Wärme brauchen, ist es auch immer was, wo man direkt auch Einzelne gut ansprechen kann. Es gibt gerade in der Frauenbewegung einen Spruch, Privates ist politisch. Das merke ich bei mir auch. Also ich habe eben bewusst nur eine halbe Stelle, das mache ich schon jahrelang, eigentlich seit meinem Berufsleben Beginn an, dass ich sage, ich will nur halb arbeiten, damit ich noch Zeit habe, mich zu engagieren. Inzwischen ist das Engagement in der Bürgerinnenenergie als mein Hobby geworden. Und die Reproduktionsarbeiten werden teilweise auch von meinem Partner übernommen oder kann eben auch von Partnerin sein oder auch von Wohngemeinschaft. Wir haben ja so ein Wohnprojekt. Und das ist doch sehr hilfreich, auf die Art auch unterstützt zu werden. Dann Geduld und Beharrlichkeit, denke ich, das kennen alle von uns, dass das ganz wichtig ist und dass Chauvinismus entgegenzutreten auch Kraft kostet. Und dass deswegen auch immer sehr wichtig ist zu gucken, wo habe ich meine eigenen Ressourcen, wie komme ich da wieder dran. Da spreche ich dann auch so wieder schon ein bisschen als Musiktherapeutin, die da auch bei der Arbeit eine Möglichkeit hat, das immer wieder zu üben. Auch privat, denke ich, ist es wichtig, erneuerbare Energien voranzubringen und Energie einzusparen, einfach weil das die Authentizität nochmal auch überzeugend ist, auch für andere. Ja, und ein nachhaltiger Lebensstil genauso. Das, denke ich, ist auch immer wichtig zu berücksichtigen, wenn man möchte, dass Frauen sich auch mehr engagieren können. Also es sind eben auch Bereiche, wo es wichtig ist, dann Frauen auch zu unterstützen, wenn sie sich mit engagieren wollen. Nun zu unserer Genossenschaft. Also wir haben den Anspruch, unsere Entscheidungen im Konsens zu treffen. Versuchen auch unsere Genossinnen und Genossen immer auf dem Laufenden zu halten, mit Infobriefen oder eben auch persönlicher Ansprache. Vorstand und Aufsichtsrat arbeiten sehr eng zusammen. Also wir haben 2 monatliche Treffen mindestens und Öffentlichkeitsarbeit ist uns auch ganz wichtig. Gerade mit dieser großen Anlage haben wir auch eine gute öffentlich-rechtliche Resonanz gefunden und auch inzwischen eine gute Vernetzung zu Politik, Vereinen und sozialen Bewegungen. 2012 haben wir uns gegründet. Wir haben inzwischen fast 230 Mitglieder. Und da war ich übrigens sehr überrascht, dass wir da quasi als Beste abgeschnitten haben bei dieser Umfrage. 38% Frauen, 134 Männer, das sind 58%. Und dann haben wir noch 8 juristische Personen mit 4%. Der Vorstand ist paritätisch besetzt und beim Aufsichtsrat sind es derzeit nur Männer. Da sind wir gerade wieder auf der Suche nach einer Frau, was sich leider nicht einfach gestaltet. Wir sind eine kleine Genossenschaft, haben ein Geschäftsguthaben von 365.000 €, wovon 56% davon Anteile von Frauen sind. Also ich habe diese Zahlen vorher nicht gekannt, da war diese Umfrage übrigens der Anlass, das mal nachzuhalten. Und ja, doch ein ganz erstaunliches Ergebnis. Bilanzsumme ist 2020 knapp 100.000 € gewesen. Und wir haben 15 aktive und aktivierbare Genossinnen und Genossen, einfach weil wir uns auch in verschiedenen Gruppen aufgeteilt haben, weil wir gemerkt haben, Vorstand und Aufsichtsrat können nicht alles alleine stemmen. Es gibt welche, die sich um den Bürgerstrom kümmern, um Service, also Aufsichtigung und Überwachung von Anlagen. Dann gibt es eben Vorstand und Aufsichtsrat und eine Gruppe, die sich speziell um die Akquise und auch Planung von Anlagen kümmert. Derzeit haben wir 12 Solaranlagen, letztes Jahr haben wir 4 gebaut und 1, MW Leistung, MW Peak Leistung. Also man sieht schon, dass wir noch gut Luft nach oben haben. Ja, ich versuche ein kurzes Fazit zu ziehen. Es ist wichtig, Frauen zur Beteiligung und Engagement zu ermutigen und auch zu merken, dass eine Person mit den Aufgaben wächst. Also bei mir zum Beispiel als Musiktherapeutin, ich hatte vorher keine Ahnung von PV oder Unternehmensführung. Da denke ich, ist es auch wichtig, einfach sich zu trauen und Mut zu haben. Inzwischen gibt es ja auch Unterstützung durch öffentliche Stellen, auch Verwaltungsstellen, auch durch die Klimaschutzkonzepte. Ich denke, da kann man immer gut dran anknüpfen. Und wichtig finde ich auch, das Engagement in einer Energiegenossenschaft auch als Einstiegsdroge zu sehen für weiteres Engagement. Und man erhält auch Bestätigung durch erfolgreiche Projekte. Ja? Und bekommt dadurch auch eben immer wieder neue Kontakte und strategische Partnerschaften und Partnerinnenschaften. Das war zum Beispiel bei einem Bauforum, wo ich eingeladen war, einen Vortrag zu halten. Es sind also immer auch gute Möglichkeiten, an die Öffentlichkeit zu gehen und die BürgerInnen-Energie voranzubringen. Das war's.
Ja, wunderbar. Thank you very much. I switch back to English. I was really astonished with your results. They're really great. As far as I remember the statistics, you said about 56% of the shares are from women, and it means it's a really good result, because we have in Germany at least the unpaid care work is very, very high. It means that the participants or the shareholders really made an effort. So it was. I don't know. I guess you speak English. It's just your presentation was in German. Okay. Okay. So my question would be, or actually, questions are gonna happen later.
Okay.
The Q&A. So maybe then I would go to the next panelist. It's Susanna Kronhammer, and she has a very exciting biography. She's a practicing professional engineer and a board member of Windfang. Windfang means something like a wind collector in English. It's an energy cooperative with about 300 female-only members. It's unbelievable to hear this. I would wish there were many more like that. And she will speak about the female cooperative network. I will give her the word so we have enough time for an inside view of such a special cooperative. Please, Susanne.
Ja, danke vielmals. Ich schließe mich meiner Vorrednerin an und werde auch erstmal meine Präsentation auf Deutsch halten. Die möchte ich jetzt einmal laden. Ja, ich hoffe, Sie können uns sehen. Wen sehen Sie? Das sind wir, die Windfangfrauen. Das ist hier ein Bild aus 2014 bei der Einweihung unserer ersten großen Anlage. Da stehen wir sozusagen auf der Treppe vor dem Turm der Anlage und haben gerade die Inbetriebnahme erfolgreich gefeiert. Wer sind wir? Das ist Windfang EG, a Female Cooperative Network. Wie alles begann. Wir wollten Frauen die Chance geben, auf dem technischen, ökonomischen, organisatorischen Gebiet Erfahrung zu sammeln und weiterzugeben. Damit wollten wir Alternativen schaffen und nicht weiter in einem System agieren, in dem auch heute noch in der dominierenden patriarchalischen Tradition von Technik fortgefahren wird. Das hatten wir, das war eine Gruppe von 11 Frauen, allesamt erfahren. Wir waren allesamt aktiv gewesen in der Anti-AKW-Bewegung und hatten auch den Sprung mitgemacht hinsichtlich der Nutzung von regenerativen Energien und hatten dann beobachtet, dass die ersten selbstverwalteten Betriebe gegründet wurden im Windbereich, im Solarbereich und Frauen da kaum Fuß gefasst haben. Und wir haben gesagt, wir brauchen ein Netzwerk, wo ausschließlich Frauen sind, wo wir uns intern austauschen können, wo wir unser technisches Know-how stärken können und wo wir uns einfach gegenseitig auch stärken können, um in dieser männlichen Welt bestehen zu können und Frauen auch eine Chance zu geben. Diese Idee war in 1990 geboren. Dann haben wir unterschiedliche Arbeitsgruppen gebildet und überlegt, was wir auch machen wollten und gesagt, basisdemokratisch ist unser Ziel, deshalb Genossenschaft, haben uns prüfen lassen und wurden dann 1992 gegründet. In Hamburg, viele Frauen kamen aus Hamburg und haben dann praktisch sofort das erste Grundstück gefunden, um eine Windkraftanlage zu bauen, die dann 1995 eingeweiht wurde. Das war eine 450 kW Bonusanlage. Wie haben wir die Anlage gefunden? Wir haben erstmal eine Recherche gemacht unter den Herstellern, welcher Hersteller den größten Frauenanteil hatte. Und da war die Firma Bonus die einzige Firma, wo eine Frau beschäftigt war im technischen Bereich. Das und noch andere Gründe haben dann den Ausschlag gegeben, dass wir eine Bonus gekauft haben. Aber diese Umfrage, die Firmen haben sich daran beteiligt, das war 1994 dann, haben uns auch Rückmeldungen gegeben. Das fanden wir alle schon spannend, dass es quasi die Windenergie zu dem Zeitpunkt noch vollkommen frauenlos war. Oja, das ist ein amerikanischer Name für eine Windgöttin, so haben wir unsere Anlage getauft. Die läuft heute auch noch und ist sozusagen ja, das heißgeliebte Maskottchen unserer Genossenschaft. 1996 konnten wir dann auf dem Dach des Frauenmuseums in Bonn unsere erste Photovoltaikanlage bauen und die haben wir auch in Frauenhand selber gebaut, mit viel Spaß und großer Unterstützung durch das Frauenmuseum. Ein schönes Beispiel ist, ich weiß nicht, wer von Ihnen das Frauenmuseum in Bonn kennt, auch selbst organisiert, gibt es seit 30 Jahren. Nicht so groß bekannt, aber hat uns da bei dem Bau der Photovoltaikanlage sehr unterstützt. Dann 1997, direkt nach dem Bau der Photovoltaikanlage, sind Hamburger Frauen auf die Akquise nach neuen Standorten gegangen und haben einen Landwirt gefunden, der uns ein Grundstück verpachtet hat. Das war gar nicht so einfach. Und konnten dann 1997 mit 4 anderen Anlagen zusammen eine Mikon-Windkraftanlage bauen. Das Bild da links, was ihr seht, sind Marienkäfer. Das ist so ein schönes Beispiel, dass Frauen neben dem technischen Know-how an harten Schrauben und Elektronik, aber auch immer den Blick haben, um sowas Besonderes wie ein Marienkäferunterkunft im Turm zu fotografieren und dann einfach mal als Lacher in die Runde zu schicken. Und dann ging alles Schlag auf Schlag. Wir haben im Emsland eine nächste Anlage gebaut, dann 2000 die zweite. Dann passierte nichts mehr. In der Zwischenzeit, nach 2000, wurden nur noch Windparks gebaut. Man musste ein riesiges Investvolumen haben, um überhaupt einen Park bauen zu können. Und da haben wir uns gesagt, gründen wir doch eine andere Gesellschaft, eine KG-Gesellschaft, die Photovoltaikanlagen baut. Die hat auf dem Dach der HW-Universität in Hamburg eine Photovoltaikanlage gebaut und die dann in den darauffolgenden Jahren noch erweitert. Wir hatten dann, das ist schon 4 Jahre her, dass wir keine Anlage mehr gebaut hatten. Wir hatten große Sorge, können wir überhaupt noch Anlagen bauen? Und haben uns dann auf ein neues Geschäftsmodell, haben quasi ein neues Geschäftsmodell erfunden zu dem Zeitpunkt und haben gesagt, wir haben keine Chance, wir haben nicht genug Geld als Genossinnenschaft, einen Windpark zu bauen, haben uns das auch noch nicht getraut, so viel Geld aufzunehmen. Lass uns doch Bestandsanlagen kaufen. Und hatten dann 2007 die Chance, 3 Vestas-Anlagen zu kaufen in der Nähe von Kassel. Und das war eigentlich ein ganz erfolgreiches Modell, sodass wir 2011 wieder 3 relativ alte, betagte Bestandsanlagen gebaut haben, aber diesmal schon mit dem Hintergrund, an diesem Standort dann repowern zu können und neue Anlagen bauen zu können. Das haben wir 2014 mit Schneewittchen auch gemacht. Das erste Mal, dass die Anlage dann wieder einen Namen gekriegt hat, haben wir uns überlegt, wie kommt man denn zu Schneewittchen? Und das hatte ganz klar den Hintergrund, es war Schneewittchen und die 7 Zwerge. Die 7 Zwerge sind die vorangegangenen kleineren Anlagen gewesen. Und Schneewittchen war dann die erste Megawatt große Anlage. 2018 kam dann Hanni und Nanni. Dies hier ist die Einweihung von Schneewittchen. Da steht in Hamburg-Frankob, da haben wir die Apfelkönigin eingeladen zur Einweihung, weil wir natürlich mit der gesamten Nachbarschaft auch gefeiert haben. Im Vorfeld sind Frauen von uns durch Frankob gegangen und haben speziell auch alle Frauen eingeladen, ob sie nicht dazukommen wollen. Vorher gab es schon mal die Akquise von uns, wollen Frauen aus Frankob nicht Genossinnen werden. Das ist etwas, was erst gar nicht gefruchtet hat, aber was jetzt Stück für Stück so langsam kommt. Jetzt kommen die Kinder, die werden Genossinnen, die Enkelinnen, die werden Genossinnen. Also lokal fängt das an zu funktionieren. Schneewittchen hat 2 MWs, 105 Meter hoch und kostete 3,5 Millionen. Jetzt sind wir schon dabei, die nächsten großen Anlagen zu bauen, Hanni und Nanni. Und das haben wir einfach auch genutzt, diesen spannenden Bau der Anlagen. Hier wird das Fundament von Hanni errichtet. Die Gründung, das sind die Gründungspfähle. Darauf wird das Fundament geflochten. Rechts davon seht ihr die Apfelplantagen. Links ist eine Weide. Und das sind schon eindrucksvolle Bilder. Da haben wir dann Frauenführungen gemacht mit den Genossinnen, um sich das anzuschauen. Hier lag alles in Eis und Schnee. Und dann wurden über die enge Frankoper Dorfstraße die Rotorblätter transportiert. Und da stand sowohl die ganzen Bürgerinnen und Bürger auf der Straße, wie auch ganz, ganz viele Genossinnen und haben diesem spannenden Transport zugeguckt und gebibbert, ob das Rotorblatt wohl unter diese Unterführung durchpasst. Und dann muss es errichtet werden, um an Bäumen vorbeizukommen in einer Kurve, um dann letztendlich hochtransportiert zu werden an den Turm. Diese beiden Anlagen haben uns viel Probleme gemacht. In der Genehmigung der Stromeinspeisung, wenn wir da nicht die Unterstützung, die Hilfe von den vielen Windfangfrauen, die alle in unterschiedlichen Professionen arbeiten, gehabt hätten, hätten wir das wahrscheinlich nicht geschafft. Wer ist wir? Wir sind 3 Vorstandsfrauen mit 6 Aufsichtsratsfrauen, die eigentlich das Gros der Arbeit machen. Hier ist ein Bild über die Energieproduktion der letzten 20 Jahre, klein angefangen, und inzwischen produzieren wir mehr als 20 Millionen Kilowattstunden, ja, je nachdem wie der Wind weht, und dann noch gut 200.000 Kilowattstunden aus Solarstromproduktion und vermeiden damit knapp 14.000 Tonnen CO2-Ausstoß. Wenn wir sagen, dass wir vielleicht sparsame CO2-Emittenten sind, sind wir doch bei 5 Tonnen pro Jahr pro Person. Und wieso kann man sagen, wenn wir bei 5 Tonnen sind, dann vermeiden wir immerhin für 2800 Frauen oder Frauen und Männer ihre CO2-Emissionen. Das lässt sich eigentlich schon blicken. Wir sind inzwischen auf 355 Genossinnen angewachsen. Es hat klein angefangen mit 11 Frauen. Jetzt sind wir bei 355. Unser Prinzip ist immer dann, wenn wir ein neues Projekt starten, machen wir die Genossinnenschaft wieder auf und laden neue Frauen ein, sich zu beteiligen. Wir haben natürlich auch viele neue Ideen. Wie soll es weitergehen? Wir, die Frauen der ersten Generation, scheiden irgendwann aus. Im Moment ist es so, dass wir 2 aktive Frauen sind im Vorstand, die auch gegen Bezahlung die Vorstandsarbeit machen. Jetzt ist die Frage, wollen wir wirklich noch weiter Windkraftanlagen bauen? Wollen wir weiter Photovoltaikanlagen bauen? Was wollen wir weiter machen? Das wird in der Genossenschaft diskutiert. Es wird entschieden, in welcher Form wir weiter arbeiten wollen. Und wir sind ziemlich gespannt darauf, was dieses und nächstes Jahr für uns noch an neuen Ideen bringen wird. Vielen Dank.
Ja, vielen Dank. Das war sehr spannend und auch sehr mit Bildern gut untermauert und der Kopfkino darf jetzt ruhig bei jedem weiterarbeiten. Ich fand es sehr bemerkenswert, diese Konsistenz seit 30 Jahren, dass da so viel auf tatsächlich andere Akteurinnen geachtet wird, also zum Beispiel bei der Windkraftanlagenproduzenten oder sowas. Das wirklich, finde ich, konsequent und sehr ermutigend, weil es viral gehen kann in anderen Bereichen auch.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that one of the main effect is that there's a huge network we have by now. It started very small, but since many women are in a different, have different competitions, are competent in different parts, we are connected to each other. And so now when we have a problem, we know who we can call, who we can talk to. That's very important. And that's very important for feeling so successful that we know that we have a network of a lot of women that support us.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, your story took me so much that I even forgot about the language. So I switched automatically to your language. It means it's really viral what you do. And when will you celebrate the 30 years of existence?
30 years, that is in 2 years. Yeah, we celebrate for sure. I don't know, we didn't talk about that, what we want to do, but we will do. Yeah.
Hopefully it will be possible to celebrate at one of the sites. Well, thank you very much. I will now then go over to Miss Andrea Cry, to Dr. Cry. She's I hope I pronounce your name well.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Dr. Cry is a revolutionary leader in developing virtual power plants using microgrid, renewable energy and storage systems. And she's from Canada, and she's a professor in the School of Environment and Sustainability at the University of Saskatchewan. And what fascinates me about your work is that I see that you will be one of the key figures for the near future, where we will have a different climate conditions as we are leaving the Holocene. And it means that even in the safe zones, continental climate, etc., will change, and your knowledge will be one of the most important, because you also specialize on island systems, or if it has to be island in case of tragedies or hurricanes and so on. So I'm very much appreciating your work, and I'm very much hoping that that many women will learn this skill, how to manage in the next several decades these challenges, and how to keep up our civilization running. Because without energy, we women will be the first one who lose it. So please, the stage is yours.
So I'm just going to switch to sharing my screen, and I hope that I get this correct. I believe I can share right here, so just bear with me, and I will run our presentation from the beginning. All right, can you confirm that you see it? We're good?
Yes, looks good.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so passionate about supporting women in technology, and especially in fields that are very challenging and underrepresented. And I wear several hats. A lot of you know that I have a company called Core Renewable Energy that I established as as my own business, starting as a female doing this in a male-dominated field. And I was so excited to start with cooperatives, helping community cooperatives in my backyard establish wind farms, and grow into so much more with my company as I continued through my own educational journey, obtaining my PhD and my specialization in microgrids. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is about my hat as an instructor and a researcher, and what we're doing at the University of Saskatchewan so that we can build this and fix this capacity issue we have with women, particularly in renewable energy. So we're going to talk about three things that I think are really key to that, and that's the climate part, the community part, and the capacity building. Okay, let's see if I get there. Okay, so now I always start my presentations reminding people that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I use this philosophy in my daily life, and I use it in my teaching as well. And it is foundational to my research, because when I approach these really difficult problems, as you can see here, we have many of them. We're addressing climate change, energy security, sustainability, remote communities, and economic development. And of course, we have huge sustainable development goals that we need to meet. And when we look in Canada at our climate, we have a lot of communities up north, and we're going to talk about this first part about it. And we know everywhere that our energy paradigm is shifting. What we think about our relationship to energy is changing. Pollution of our environment is no longer acceptable. Risking lives to have fuel transported through our vulnerable communities is no longer acceptable. And monopolies and centralization are becoming things of the past. They're not key to unlocking our future potential. And in fact, a lot of people are not interested in them anymore. So as I just mentioned with Albert Einstein's quote, I like to apply the same thinking to how we will adapt to our communities, and that we can't inhabit the communities of tomorrow by the ways of thinking today. We really need to leapfrog. We need to think outside of the box, and we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's disruption. And, you know, we are seeing massive drop of costs for renewable technology, be it wind or solar, and the resulting unprecedented adoption of these renewable energies, as well as increasing demand. And there's still a frustration among the mass consciousness about the rising prices of energy, particularly electricity. And we see the rise of the prosumer, a consumer who's no longer consumes power but sells it back to the grid. And this is all happening because of the progressive energy policies that are allowing this to happen. Without those, it goes together. You can't just have technology without the right policy in place. And we know that we are going to continue to encounter more frequent devastation, be it all the disasters we've seen, and most recently in North America, Texas a week or so ago now with their ice storm. So the demand to rebuild in these regions is really to leapfrog business as usual and to solve this crisis with solutions that don't exist today. Status quo is no longer acceptable, and in fact, people demand this. So remote communities will lead the way by their very nature of being more susceptible to climate change with more dramatic responses. We know remote communities, be it islands, geographically or electrically isolated regions as we have up north in Canada, they represent a microcosm of this greater reality. As Christina just said, we are going to be facing more times where we actually realize how we ourselves can even be our own islands. And these communities are really going to be the first to transition to this new energy paradigm and lead the way. And energy security really is the biggest threat to humanity. We are seeing it affect our livelihoods, our quality of life, right down to the basics of our water that we need to survive, vital surgeries our hospitals need to provide, and the preservation of food and sustenance and medicine. So due to the high cost of electricity and these unreliable systems that threaten quality of life, we leave populations vulnerable. Healthcare, education, safety all become threatened. And in order to begin to address these issues, we really need to address energy sovereignty. And without the ability to produce their own food, communities just remain under the foreign control of oil imports or other interests and greatly jeopardize their ability to control their own livelihoods and address their energy crises when these natural disasters hit. And so energy sovereignty requires the use of indigenous natural resources that are local to a population. And what I discovered when I could not solve this problem by just relying on one type of resource alone in my own research was that it's really the complementary nature of wind and solar and dispatchable resources like biomass and other ways to dispatch resources along with storage that is going to enable us to solve these problems and become more robust and more strong in dealing with the climate crises that we are going to see. But storage, we cannot underestimate the power of storage in this recipe. And this really is the beginning of how we start to understand microgrids. And so every location is going to be as unique as our own fingerprints. I always like to remind people that we have unique resources and space to actually deploy these resources. So we have to think about the different priorities of supplying what we need there, be it critical infrastructures as hospitals, water, sewage treatment, schools, transportation. And every region will have different policies and pricing structures. So all of these things come together to form this trifecta of technology, economics, and policy. And at this point of confrontation, it's really a catalyst. It's a catalyst to solving these problems as we move forward with community energy development projects. And so they all come together. And we cannot underestimate the power of the economics part, as we've seen in Lazard's latest annual levelized cost of energy analysis, how the price for solar, onshore wind, and utility scale solar is actually more cost effective than conventional generation, and as we build going forward. And of course, policy is key to unlocking this development. Communities can participate in the full spectrum of renewable energy opportunities, and there are many, and this is just one part of really the most obvious ones where all our different types of energy fall under. But you have to remember that on the spectrum, not every one will be suitable, and communities need to have the information to be informed to make these decisions, because the solution isn't going to be just one alone. You're not going to solve the crisis with a variable supply of just wind or just solar. We need to find the right balance, and we need a complementary nature of generation, resources, and storage. So when we look at community, our second C, community power concerns itself with community ownership, with community development and capacity building around energy generation and sustainability. Yet we still have 20% of our global population that does not have access to electricity. And when we look at remote communities, that number jumps to 90%, which just blows my mind. So I'm constantly motivated by this because we see these challenges in our backyard. Here's a beautiful picture of a remote community, a First Nation community in Kiniseo, Saskatchewan. We see these problems in our northern communities. We also see them in our Arctic regions. And the Arctic will be susceptible to these extreme challenges and seasonal variations because they experience extreme seasonal changes, and this will impact also with it'll be impacted by climate change. And just to give you a snapshot of what our communities are facing across from the baseline in the urban centers compared to what our diesel communities costs are, we see escalating prices of 37 times what we're seeing in the base urban cases, which is very, very expensive. And to give you a context of what our off-grid communities look like in Canada, we have 280 diesel communities, represents 200,000 Canadians. And 144 of these communities are Indigenous, where they actually represent 5% of the Canadian population, but they take the burden of 50% of being off diesel. And in the context of price, giving you some cents per kilowatts in Canadian dollars, we see that in Nunavut, our communities are paying a subsidized price of 28.4 cents per kilowatt hour. But when you exceed that rate class and you go to the unsubsidized rates, we have 56.7 cents per kilowatt hour in Iqaluit and 112 cents per kilowatt hour in Kugaruk. Comparing that to an urban center in southern Saskatchewan is 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour there. So you can see huge discrepancies in price. Yet the energy transition is actually a federal government policy in Canada. Our Liberal government has said that they will ensure that Indigenous communities that rely on diesel are powered by clean, reliable energy by 2030. How are we going to get there? We've got 9 years to go. Communities are going to play like a big part in this. And in Canada, community power refers to the direct participation of ownership and sharing of the collective benefits from renewable energy projects by and for a local community. So it's really a democratic ownership process where communities are investing into their local economy, and it's a triple win for the community, for individual investors, and the province. And we see community scale Indigenous driven projects as this biomass project shows here. And the data and the research show that for every dollar to community owned solar project returns $2 to the economic benefit of a provincial economy. So we really see how communities benefit from renewable energy generation. Diversification of generation provides the more secure supply, along with the local job creation, self-sufficiency, and the ownership, which come together to form a really strong partnership in these projects. And this is a perfect opportunity for us for our economic reconciliation in Canada, addressing energy security, building wealth, and coming together to do this. So a snapshot across Canada shows how many projects we have that are Indigenous community energy projects, and they keep growing, and we have a full range of them across the renewable energy spectrum. Here's the reality check when it comes to women, gender, power, and challenges in Canada. More stats that just boggle my mind here. In Canada, only 15% of women are directors of energy sector industry jobs, and 14% are officers. Very, very low numbers. Now, this shows just how rare it is, and sometimes very lonely. And it is exactly what I have felt in my business. It's exactly my experience being the only woman at the table when you're making decisions. And I've personally set one of my recommendations is to always bring another woman to the table because of my experiences, what I have done. Along with that, I also created a podcast called Fem Power to help other women learn from each other and to have that network built so that we could keep talking about these issues. And it all stemmed from my experience being the only woman at that board, at that table making decisions about energy projects. Now, when we look at the demographics in Canada, only 6% of the electricity sector is women. So you could see we have a really long way to go, even though we're known as a strong, developed country. We only have 6% of our workforce that are women in the electricity sector. And when we look at why that happens and what the data shows, why was there such a negative interest by women? We see that that 65% of women are not interested, and that it's because they see the job requiring them to be active, get sweaty or dirty, and solve problems. And I thought, why is this? Why did I end up in this field? And I had no issue with it, really. And I think it's because of how we raise our children, how we raise our young girls, and how we need them to get comfortable with these opportunities and not just say, don't get dirty, don't get sweaty, go solve problems. We need to tell them to do these things because it carries with them their whole life. So this is really foundational to how we establish our societies as well, and how we condition our girls to become the women leaders moving forward to address this. And when we look at who has a positive interest in the electricity sector in Canada, 37% of them are interested. They are in the age group of 30 to 36. They're men, primarily in Ontario, and they have full-time jobs and live in urban centers. And this is not what we expect when we think of the definition of women and community power. So I thought, why is this happening? And this has been in my own experience as well, is that when we look at who's funding projects and who's funding businesses, generally 2% of venture capitalists put money towards female founders, and this was in 2017, and I asked why. And then 4% of the VC deals went to women in 2017. And when we look at that graph, you could see from 2006 to 2017, it's increasing, but very, very lightly, like not a lot. And when we look at where the money is going, we see that Female-founded companies are the least of those being founded, where the male ones are highly dominated, and the female-male founded companies, which is also my experience as my partner is in the company with me, are also less less funded. So who's giving this money away? When we look at who the people are, we see that 82% of them are male, 70% of them are white by race, and when we look at their educational background, they are college educated or of some sort, either Stanford or Harvard or some other institution. So the people giving away the money are giving it to the people that look like them. And we need to diversify who the investors are in the energy companies and where the money comes from for better representation in the business and industry chain all along the way. And when we look at where this money is going in Canada, it primarily goes to Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. Why? Because that's where the majority of the population that is interested in the sector also exists. So we see.
I'm so sorry, Andrea. I'm so sorry. I have to moderate a little bit because we have a very limited time. So I would love if you wrap it up in the next half a minute, and then.
Certainly. Yeah, okay, that's all I got left. So let me keep going. Okay, so let me talk about the capacity that we're building here. So we have a program called the Masters of Sustainability in Energy Security, and it's really been built from the ground up as to empower a network of Northern Indigenous and remote career professionals through distance education and purpose-driven practical experience to lead that sustainable energy development transition. And this is really where we're transcending the boundaries to manage these complex problems. This has been, just to give you some stats on what our first cohort has shown, is that it's been 55% women and 54% Indigenous and Northern students in this program. And it really is to promote like a work-life balance to be done at distance. And so we're creating the programs. It's a 2-year part-time delivery. It's what makes learning easier for people, especially who are not coming with a background that is very technical, but are transitioning to this. We have a program called CASIS Partnership. It's Community Appropriate Sustainable Energy Security. It involves 15 Northern Indigenous communities and also researchers from Canada, Alaska, Sweden, and Norway to deal with the Arctic issues around this. So in conclusion, we need to have more distributed generation adopters. We need people to be educated in ways to do that. And we need gender supports to enable that, as well as diversified investments to investors and investees. Fundamental part of engineering, which I always remind people, is that there's opportunities everywhere because energy is just a transfer. It cannot be destroyed. So thank you for having me, and shine bright because you are brilliant and the earth is hiring. And this is where you can contact me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. That was a very nice inside view to Canada. And now we move back to Europe, and actually to the capital of Europe. I would like to introduce you Paula Abreu-Marquez. I hope I'm pronouncing you well. She's responsible for defining and steering the EU renewable energy policy, and with the focus of Renewable Energy Directive, which is of course very, very important for energy communities within Europe, and it's recast for the period of 2021 and 2030. She also works on the definition of a policy framework of post-2020 at the European Commission, and she graduated in economics in Lisbon and masters in European economics in Belgium. And she joined the Commission more than 25 years ago, and energy communities can have a boost finally, thanks to the article of Renewable Energy Directive, the Article 21 and 22. And I'm very curious to hear Ms. Marquez's view on women in European community energy. Please, Paula, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be with you today. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Hope you can see it. Do you see it? No, you see the wrong one.
Now we see EU Green Deal Renewable Energy Communities.
Yeah, okay, so then it's fine. It's fine. So then you see it. What I would like to perhaps, wait. So first of all, I'm here, perhaps I have a double hat. So I'm in DG Energy, and I was responsible for the preparation and then the negotiation of the Renewable Energy Directive that brought the latest one, brought main important provisions for the empowerment of consumers, including the energy communities, the renewable energy communities. But I'm also, and I will explain what it means, I'm also a quality coordinator in my DG, my Department of Energy, okay? So I'm here with this double hat, and I will make the links between the two. So perhaps to start with, so as you may have understood by now, the current European Commission, led by President von der Leyen, is engaged in achieving a union of equality. And this is why our president, in her first manifesto, her ideas, political ideas for our work, she puts the equality in the top of the list, in her top list of things to look after, and she has set up a dedicated equality portfolio and nominated a commissioner in charge of equality. So for the first time, we have a commissioner with a policy portfolio on equality in our institution. And that commissioner has set up a task force where I sit as every equality coordinator that each department had to nominate. So the aim is really to enshrine equality across the spectrum of policies that we deal with. In 2020, so almost a year ago, it was a bit before the International Women's Day, the Commission adopted the first gender equality strategy. And there it presented policy objectives and actions to make significant progress by 2025 towards a gender equal Europe. So the aim really being to mainstream equality in all its strands, not only here more the gender, but mainstreaming it across the policy spectrum. When we look at things that we will be seeing this year coming out as implementation of this strategy, you will see a proposal for binding pay transparency measures. So we are still not there in European Union. So you will see this coming from the Commission, as well as the implementation of the Gender Action Plan in external relations. So also mainstreaming gender equality in the EU external relations front, aiming obviously at a gender equal world. And also you will see, amongst others, a legislative proposal coming out of the Commission this year to combat gender-based violence. So there are a lot of things that will be coming. I would invite you to go through the gender equality strategy and see the long list of concrete specific proposals that the Commission has committed to do over the next year, so until 2025. And as I said, the aim is really to mainstream equality into all the EU policies. And so there is this task force that works toward there with the people coming from every department. I come from the energy department, but I also have colleagues coming from the transport sector and others. And really to the aim to integrate the equality perspective in all EU policies and major initiatives. So really to enshrine it, while at the same time also looking at equality in our organization. So this is also another aspect we are working on. What I did in my department with full support from my Director General and the senior management was to establish internally an informal network, what we call NR Equality Network. So it was established a bit more than a year ago, and our tasks are, let's say, organized in three areas. First of all, obviously, to provide substance and support to the work of the commissioner in charge of equality and the work of the task force. Secondly, to support equality and equality values in our structure. So in my department, Director General for Energy. So in our structure and in our working methods. And thirdly, to promote equality in energy policy. So what we do in our department, in energy policy, in all our initiatives, and try to mainstream equality, in particular gender equality in the energy sector. So this is the work that we do in this informal network. And I mean, this is work that we do on top of our normal activity. So I am head of unit in charge of a specific area in energy, but this comes on top, and the same for everybody involved on a voluntary base in this network. We organize a number of things. Just to give you an example, all sorts of things for raising the awareness inside the house. We organize, we offer training and coaching to women. And when looking at promoting equality in the energy sector, in our policy, so we organize events. We started since last year to bring much more women in energy subjects into the EU Sustainable Energy Week that may be familiar to many of you. Since last year, we have an award, Women in Energy Award Prize, and we'll continue with that this year. We are conducting a study on employment of women in the energy sector. I have to say that perhaps unlike Canada, the statistics across Europe are not so good, not so available. So we are digging into that, and we are also preparing the ground for setting up what we call EU Platform for Change, meaning a platform where we will invite all sorts of organizations, be it industry, academia, NGOs, the member states, national, local level administrations to sit together and discuss programs that we can have and share ideas on how to mainstream equality in all our work in the energy sector. Perhaps a word on energy community, which is the subject of today's event. So, as we see it, women represent between a quarter and a third of the workforce in the energy sector in the EU. I'm talking about global numbers, but of course, in terms of decision making, it is much less representation, as you know. And as we see it, community energy, as well as everything that relates to empowering the consumer in energy, is a way to correct these numbers. And in our policy set up in the context of the European Green Deal, we really push for the empowerment of the consumers, to give decision-making power to the citizens, putting the citizens at the center of the energy transition. They are important actors, and also looking carefully at the slides that we saw already today at the panel, we see that it is so fundamental to have citizens on board and the communities, because of one, it is investment that is brought to the sector to mainstream renewables and help in the energy transition. And secondly, it's extremely important to have energy communities to help also to work on the public acceptability. And when I saw the slides of the construction of these windmills, just remind me of problems that we have in certain regions in Europe, and opposition to onshore wind. So it is really important also to look at the involvement of the communities and the citizens for the public acceptance of these important projects. So, and for the first time in our legislation, in the Renewable Energy Directive, what we call the Renewable Energy Directive 2, RED 2, we have set up legal provisions defining what do we mean by renewable energy communities, and also citizen energy communities, as well as prosumers. So for the very first time, we have a definition, and we have enshrined in legislation the rights and the obligations. And this is extremely useful to, let's say, to protect this local level activity that we want really to engage in. Perhaps a word also on still on the energy communities. So for us, so these energy communities are not supposed to be profit driven. There is a very important notion of empowerment and also of the community benefits. And so we have established clear criteria to define these energy communities and the renewable energy communities. So in our energy system of the future, and as well, as already been said before, we are in a crunch time in this energy transition, and as also our president said on several occasions throughout this period of recession, of crisis, of caused by the pandemic. Now it's time to rebuild, but rebuild better, and this is why we are looking at a greener build up of our economy and society, and here as we see the energy system of the future is a system where the consumer can have a say and can choose the type of energy that they consume, can choose what type of provider, if by themselves, being a self consumer, or being together having joined a cooperative, being a local energy community, or also choosing a supplier of their choice. And also, this can also choose if to sell, to share, or even to store. So it has the right to do all this. And this is well enshrined in the legislation that member states are now actively implementing. They have until the end of June this year to do what we call the transposition, meaning to transpose into national legislation all these rules. As I said before, the definition in our legislation of the renewable energy communities it includes a description of the social purpose of the community, and the primary purpose must be the community benefits, or not financial profits, as I said before. So as I just said, the member states are required to put in place a supportive framework for the development of these renewable energy communities, for their good functioning and their access to finance and the necessary information that they need to get access to. And we see these renewable energy communities, as I said before, as a way to help mainstream equality and gender equality in the sector. Important to mention also with this regard, also based on what I heard from the previous presenters, is the fact that in addition to look at this local level, the communities and empowerment of the consumer, we have also enshrined in legislation important provisions for investors and for the renewable energy communities, but not only. And this I want to mean everything that is related to simplify the administrative procedures, to reduce the red tape. And you will find in our directive concrete indications and limitations in terms of the permitting period, calling on member states and obliging member states to establish one-stop shop, so that a project promoter only needs to address to one single place, and also to reduce the administrative burden. So the permitting procedures, the timing, the one-stop shop, and also having seen the projects before on wind energy that probably date back from many years ago, time has come also to think about repowering, and there are also very important provisions in the legislation. And so this is what I wanted to share with you. And I would like to say that it was really a pleasure to listen to Barbara and Susanna, and I would very much like to keep contact with you. Also to have the opportunity to invite you to one of our events, not the least the EU Sustainable Energy Week, because you can give really concrete and very good examples in the ground of what we are putting in our legislation and trying to push forward through our policy at EU level. And also it was very, very, very nice and very interesting to listen to Andrea and the exciting experience and findings in Canada. And I would very much like to keep in touch also with you, Andrea, and to get your slides. Thank you very much, and please to answer any question that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. It was very exciting, especially from the European point of view. And I'm happy that you also share the enthusiasm with the female energy projects. And it would be really nice to see one day at the European Commission to have some kind of tools to measure which directive is helping women's participation more. That would be really revolutionary, and to support such kind of regulatory measures. I would like to ask if any of the participants have any questions. Maybe, or maybe you would like to ask from each other. I mean, Paula, you already mentioned that you are inviting the 2 German participants to USEP. But maybe there is some more input or some important information for exchange.
Just to break the ice, I would have perhaps a question to Barbara and Suzanne in the sense, so you have gained this experience and long-standing experience, pioneering experience. Perhaps a double question to you. First of all, okay, you are sharing with us examples in Germany, okay? And we see many different realities across Europe. What would be the lessons that you could offer to communities in other member states? How to go about it? That would be my first question. And the second question would be, I don't know how much you know about the Renewable Energy Directive and the legislation that the Commission has proposed and that's been adopted by the member states in the Parliament. But what could you say in terms of what could the EU level action further help you and others like you to have these projects multiplied and disseminated across Germany and across Europe? Thank you.
Okay, you have 2 questions. The first one, what can other countries or other energy cooperatives or community energy groups learn, or what can I tell them? Well, it depends naturally from the conditions in the other countries that I don't know, because at the moment I'm only on national German field active. But I think it's very important before you start a project to have a base of people who find it very good what you want to do, and then to try to have a good contact to the administrations of the community, or also of the higher level organizations, because finally these are the people that decide, and well, that's not always easy, because we depend on the goodwill of the legislation and the Verwaltung vor Ort, of the administration of the community.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Question.
Oh, no, sorry, you can continue if you want.
Okay. The second question, what can be proof from European, from the Commission? We remark in Germany that it's what is happening on the EU, it's very progressive. In Germany, the politicians they don't follow the aims of the renewable energy Richtlinie.
Directive.
And the circumstances are not so that we can say, "Boah, that's a field where we can really realize projects." Yeah, so that there has to happen a lot of things, and I hope that because I think within 10 years we have to finish. We have to stop all fossil energy. I hope that the politicians will realize that.
That's a nice word. 2030, we have to go 100% renewable. Thank you, Barbara. Great. Susanna, maybe you can continue.
I think that it's very important for a cooperative that wants to set up wind energy converters to talk to the people who live at the place and to integrate the people who live at the place you want to build or set up a wind energy converter. Because a lot of people, especially in northern Germany, feel that all the wind energy converters are set up in front of their nose, they say, and why should we have it here, and why? And the best thing is to integrate the people that live at a place in the business. So in the cooperative, that a cooperative is working with the people who live at a place where they want to build the renewable energy.
Great. It's the highest participation of women in Germany. It is in energy cooperatives. And I was just wondering how the auctions, the Ausschreibungen, how the auctions, what kind of effect do they have on cooperatives? I hope, Paula, that was Susanna's answer was satisfying. And maybe, Susanna, if you could say a word about the auctions, I would be interested.
We don't have any experience with the auction, so I can't say anything to it because we built the newest energy converters in 1918. That was before the auction came.
So since then, you are not planning new projects?
We have to build new energy converters, but we don't have a place yet to build one.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And for us, it's difficult to build energy plants that have more than 750 kilowatt peak. It's a risk for cooperatives, but there are some initiatives that support cooperatives, and I think that's a possibility for cooperatives as well to build energy plants that have more than 750 kW peak.
Sure. We don't see the problems with the auction, but we see the problems to find places where you can set up wind energy converters and where it's still okay to set them up. And we see that a lot of wind energy converters have to be removed because they're over 20 years old, don't get any money anymore, and you can't build any new one there. That's the problem. And the problem is that wind energy was in the hand of small companies, farmers, small cooperatives, and big business doesn't want that wind energy stays in the hand of small cooperatives. So it's all going into the hand of big companies. So small companies, either men or women, they hardly have any chance to build wind energy converters anymore.
Thank you, Susanne. Maybe Paula, if you need the statistical data, it's from World Wind Energy Association. There is the study, what we can send you to look into the statistical data.
Christina, that would be very useful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you. So there are some questions coming in, and from Molly Walsh, she has a question to Andrea about reimagining the grid. As we have another 9 minutes, that Paula definitely has to leave. Please, Andrea, if you could answer Molly's question.
Okay, I'm not really sure in what context, but I can just speak in general.
Maybe I can just
sure,
ask you my question. Yeah.
Thank you, Molly.
On one of your last slides about what we need, one of the things was reimagining the electricity grid. It's something that I'm also really interested in, and I wondered if I could ask you what your vision would be for a reimagined electricity grid.
Absolutely. So this really comes down to reliability and resilience, and how are we going to build that in? And the vision here is really to have more microgrids of power, especially in our remote communities, but that even in our communities, when we build in the suburban areas, to have different grids that can island on and off to the main system. Now, there are some technical challenges, but nothing that can't be overcome with technology and with design, especially putting that design up front. And when we start to diversify this and we look at, like, for example, what happened in Texas last week with their large ice storm, Texas their power pool is independent. They're not connected into the power pool of North America. We have a few power pools in North America. They are completely separate, just like Quebec is in Canada. So what we really should see is some sort of backup, at least integration, as to why these systems are allowed to be islanded. Effectively, their power pool is islanded, or how they can back up with either a plan B, C, D, whatever they want to call it, by being interconnected at some level. And if we go on a more discrete spectrum, what we could see and by that I mean a smaller scale in our backyards are more community power projects, or allowing for microgrids in community areas. I even go right down to the household. I often say that your house is no longer just your castle, it is your own island. And if we look at that ourselves, how can we be resilient? How can we make our own homes be power plus homes, so that we can also be independent if we need to be in the case of an emergency, or power up our neighborhood? How can we create community grids? How can we then create those community grids to feed into a larger grid, a larger, say, microgrid in our larger maybe area, and then build from there, and determine where these systems can island on and off from each other? So if we come with this perspective of everything is an island, even your own home, we start to build differently, we start to interconnect differently. I hope that helps answer the question.
Thanks, Andrea, that's great. There are two more questions for you. Katharina Haberströmer, my colleague, has two questions. I don't know, is it possible, Katharina, that you speak? Is it technically possible, or shall I read the questions? Maybe Timo or Stefan can help answering.
Can you hear me?
Excellent, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your great presentation, to all of the speakers. So I have a question to you, Andrea, because Canada seems to be very good in gender just climate.
Oh, I lost. I can't hear.
We lost her?
Yes.
Okay, maybe another try.
Will I read the question?
I think it should work again. I just made her as a panelist. Probably that's why.
Okay, now you can.
Yes.
Now you can hear
you.
me. I'm sorry. Yes, regarding Canada, because I'm always impressed that Canada is a very good and a champion in gender just climate policy. And do you agree? Is it just an urban effect? And why is there so less interlinkage between the climate and energy policy and women representatives in the energy sector?
I think there's a huge disconnect. I think we're working on it. We're trying to address sustainable development goals. I know at our institution that's massive, and it comes down to the foundation of our educational programming as well. So we are adjusting everything to really address these issues, and gender and equality is huge issues, but there is this disconnect from, I think what has happened is that the energy industry has gone and developed on itself. And in Canada, we have almost like silos of it, because energy is a provincial jurisdiction. It's not a national jurisdiction. So we have this issue, yet our remote communities and our First Nations have a tie to the government, which has a fiduciary duty to supply and power and take care of our First Nations. So we have these interesting dynamics coming along, and how energy plays into that is, I think we're starting to address this in at least at the level of education and at the community scale, and wanting to do this. But we have huge issues when it comes to, for example, monopolies in where I live in my jurisdiction that control the power and who can connect to the grid and who can't. And we've had very stubborn debates and negotiations about connecting community power projects that are just as competitive as what is coming off the large hydro, but there's no incentive. There is no policy in place that enforces any of this. So there are pieces to these puzzles that are disconnected. And I think what has to happen is we need to have stronger policies in place to allow for things to sync up more with energy, to allow these projects to come online that have the gender component behind them, that have more women inclusivity, and to empower women. Because I can tell you from my experience with my company, working with the cooperatives, we were doing large scale wind utility at the, we were starting 75 megawatts, expanding to 150 megawatts, and then to 300 megawatts. We had planned for community owned energy, 300 megawatts. This is a massive scale. We have the plans, we had everything. And what had happened was negotiations would break down with the monopolized power authority, because they just didn't, I think they were threatened by this setting precedent of what this meant, that communities could actually do this much power. The technology's there, the policies need to be there. Otherwise we get stuck. And we need those policies to include more inclusivity with the gender and the balance, to bring energy to the forefront that climate has received. So.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Katharina, do you have another question?
No, not at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question would be from Lars. And should he ask it himself, or shall I read it? Yes.
Can you can hear me? Okay. So
yes.
Thank you very much also from my side for these very inspiring examples. And I would also like to ask a question with regard to the enabling framework. And Andrea already touched on this for the Canadian context, but maybe also to the two German examples. What would help you most? And probably, as we will probably not have a feed-in tariff again, would a kind of risk funding or money in the planning phase, such as the one we have in Schleswig-Holstein, really help you? So if you've got any ideas on policy instruments that would bring your projects forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We only have actually 1 minute left.
You can see. I just want to give a short answer. I showed you that in 5 years we didn't realize any project. That one reason was that we didn't dare to take up so much money and didn't take that risk. If there would have been somebody who had said, this project and we help you, Windfarm would be much larger and a bigger company by now. Now since we are nearly 30, we will manage every project, I'm sure. But in the beginning, we really could have needed some help.
Thank you. These are great closing words. That's maybe also if there are some people from the economic side, and Paula, maybe you can bridge. Thank you very much that you all participated. It was very exciting. Paula has to leave, unfortunately. Do you want to say last word, Paula, before you leave?
Now, just to thank you. It was really a pleasure to listen to you, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any either things that you would like us, the Commission, to know what's happening in the ground, or to share your good stories like the ones we have just heard today. And I'll hope to continue to be in touch with all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really a pleasure. I'm sorry I have to leave now for another meeting, but it was really, really good. Stay well. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you. Bye. The other panelists, would you like to, Susanna, would you like to have a closing word?
Thank you very much for being here. I think it's very interesting to talk about energy and future of energy and how this is connected with female work in our environment and in the world. And I think it's very important to connect those two. I think the females have another approach to energy, and if you combine this with a hard men's work, then we will take a lot more care on the environment and the dealing of people working with each other. I think that's the job for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Barbara, could you say another one sentence, and then I will pass it over to Andrea and then to Antonia Proca for the next session.
I thank for the invitation to this panel. I'm very glad that we started a networking today. I hope that will continue a little bit, because the empowerment of women needs a lot of confidential working together, and empowers. And I'm glad and happy, very happy to have been invited, and I hope that the politicians will see that we have to act and not only to talk.
Thank you, Barbara. It's only the beginning. Okay. So, and Andrea?
Yeah, I think, from my experience, I think it really comes down to we need to fund women. We need women to know that, to believe in themselves, and the best way to show them that is to support them. And the hardest way to obtain support, I think, is the financial aspect, because these are capital intensive projects. And if you can partner having that support on the capital side with the technology and the expertise, I think we're going to have a huge leap forward. And then it's just growing that, and then starting at generations younger. Like I think of my own daughters, and I think of my own children, moving forward through life and knowing early enough that they can have this as an opportunity for them. So we need to start generationally much, much earlier. And we need to put sustainability and everything around renewable energy into the school systems at a much younger age, and to have that experience so that we can get ahead on the generational gap that we really have to confront as well.
Excellent, Andrea. For any exchange, maybe you can put your website link for further communication. And I would now love to ask Antonia Proca to continue. Dear Antonia, you can take it over from me.
Thank you very much, Christina. Let me see if I can turn on my camera. It seems that it works now. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you also to the previous presenters. I was lucky enough to log in on time, and I was able to follow also the discussions that you had previously. Now I'm very happy and to continue today's session with a round of discussion on a particular topic that's focusing on the type of support that the governments, the media, and other stakeholders can actually offer in order to achieve a gender balance in the sector, our sector. I would then like to invite all the panelists of our session to turn on their cameras. And I would like to ask, I will invite you one by one to give a brief statement first for the overarching question that I mentioned. How can governments and media and other stakeholders support this? So I will start with Katarina Habersberg from WECF. Katarina has over 20 years experience in the energy field and is currently project manager and board member of the NGO Women Engaged for a Common Future. Katarina has coordinated and is still coordinating EU-funded projects designed to help lift women out of the energy poverty, ensuring that they have access to essential services such as warmth, cooling, lighting, and the energy to power appliances. Katarina also runs several projects that, as a conscious aim, involve women at all stages of the process of generating, transmitting, and distributing energy. And I'm very proud to say that I feel lucky that we're collaborating with Katarina also on the UCINA, the European Citizen Energy Academy, because Katarina has also won the EU Sustainable Energy Award for her work towards a gender equitable energy policy. So Katarina, the floor to you. What do you think? What can governments, the media, and other stakeholders do?
Well, thank you very much, Antonia. And I would like to answer the question of Lars, for example. He was asking what could governments do? And I would answer, well, the German government, for example, they only have to implement the Renewable Energy Directive on time, and what they are anyhow obliged to do it, because that would push, for example, energy communities, it would push women, it would push young people, it would increase diversity. So that would be really, that's one main pillar we will see, we will hopefully see in the energy transition in Germany and in all the EU member states. And second point is, Paula also introduced the gender equality strategy of the European Commission, which is great. I think there is a political will for gender equality. But what we need and what we do not see is coherent policies. We do not see gender just energy policy. We do not see too much climate just policy, gender just climate policy. For example, we do not link social and energy policy in terms of energy poverty. So that is what we needed. What we would need is coherent policy. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comment, Katarina. Then I would, since you mentioned that we need policy, I think that is a good way to continue with the second speaker today, participant in this panel discussion, Wiebke Brems from Landtag Nordrhein-Westfalen. I hope that I pronounced, my German is not so good, apologies. And Wiebke has studied electrical engineering and is a member of the state parliament and vice chairwoman in the Green State Parliamentary Group in North Rhine-Westphalia and a spokeswoman for the energy and climate policy. So you heard, Wiebke, also the comment of Katarina, but maybe you can actually continue the discussion addressing what is the role of governments, for instance, in this, and policy more specifically in this topic, on this topic.
Ja, ganz herzlichen Dank auch für die Einladung, der ich sehr gerne gefolgt bin. Ich konnte leider vorher nicht so viel folgen von der Veranstaltung, weil wir parallel Plenarsitzungen haben. Ich sitze gerade im Landtag und das Schöne an den digitalen Runden ist ja, sonst hätte ich gar nicht an dieser Runde teilnehmen können, aber so geht es dann an der Stelle. Und ja, ich kann da sehr gut ergänzen, weil es natürlich so ist, dass die entsprechenden wir in den Parlamenten, wir die Gesetze machen und wir darauf achten müssen, dass bei Klimaschutz, bei Energiepolitik halt die Fragen der Genderpolitik auch mehr beachtet werden. Wir haben das erste Mal, jedenfalls, dass ich es bewusst mitbekommen habe, in unserem NRW, also nordrhein-westfälischen Klimaschutzplan gemacht, der 2015 herausgegeben wurde, wo es das erste Mal ein Gender-Kapitel gab. Und ehrlich gesagt gab es da auch viele Kommentare, die das sehr ins Lächerliche gezogen haben. Was das denn jetzt solle, Klimaschutz ist doch für alle da. Und daran merkt man einfach schon, wie im Grunde genommen, wo die Problemlage liegt. Und ich glaube, dass sie an vielen Stellen anzupacken ist. Wir müssen also in den Parlamenten direkt bei den Gesetzen schon darauf achten, dass Gender-Aspekte immer direkt auch mit betrachtet werden. Aber nur im Gesetz stehen reicht halt nicht. Es muss in den Ministerien oder an anderen Stellen halt auch umgesetzt werden und kontrolliert werden, dass das wirklich auch gemacht wird. Und als nächsten Aspekt finde ich, es hängt dann immer noch mit anderen Bereichen zusammen. Es hängt damit zusammen, dass natürlich in der Politik insgesamt, aber besonders in der Energiepolitik, ich selber bin ja in dem Bereich unterwegs, fast nur Männer sind. Das vorher habe eben auch Elektrotechnik studiert, in dem Bereich hauptsächlich Männer sind. Das ist alles sehr männerdominiert. Und da dann Frauenthemen reinzubringen, ist auch nicht immer einfach. Das heißt, aus meiner Sicht hängt es auch viel damit zusammen, dass wir dafür sorgen müssen, dass es schon in der Bildung so anfängt, dass Mädchen schon früh unterstützt werden und in alle Bereiche kommen und es nicht immer man nur so eine Rarität quasi als Frau in diesem Bereich ist. Also es hängen viele Sachen zusammen, aber die Aufgabe von Politik ist natürlich, Gesetze zu machen und dafür zu sorgen, dass sie auch umgesetzt werden.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a quite important statement that you made there in terms of we see that the engineers world is quite male dominated. I will actually continue. I would like to continue our discussion here, moving to another field, let's say. I'm happy to have together with us Claudia Bredman from the Energieagentur NRW. Claudia has actually studied landscape planning, another very important area for the development of renewable energies, and has a diploma in ecology from the University of Essen since 1980s. Since 2015, I'm sorry. She has been head of the field of wind energy at the Energy Agency NRW. And as a co-owner of the landscape planning office, she previously worked for more than 25 years as a project manager and appraiser for municipalities and companies. Since the mid-90s, her professional focus has been on the use of wind energy and its effects on landscape, people, and the natural balance. So let's see, I'm very curious, Claudia, to also see and hear your perspective on the topic. What is the support that we can have from different stakeholders to ensure that we get a more gender balanced energy transition? The floor is yours.
Ja, erstmal ganz herzlichen Dank für die Einladung. Gerne bin ich heute dabei. Vielleicht eine ganz kurze Korrektur. Also ich bin aktuell, leite ich das Themengebiet Windenergie bei der Energieagentur seit 6 Jahren, noch bis Ende des Jahres. Dann wird ja wahrscheinlich die Energieagentur erstmal in der Form, wie sie heute ist, Geschichte sein. Und vorher war ich über 25 Jahre im Bereich der Projekt- und Landschaftsplanung mit der Windenergie betraut. Ja, auch in meiner Erfahrung ist es so, dass eben, obwohl Frauen sich sehr für die Energiewende interessieren, für den Klimaschutz, immer noch sehr unterrepräsentiert sind, vor allem im Bereich der Windenergie. Sie haben ja auch eben, oder heute Morgen kam ja auch raus, im Photovoltaikbereich ist es etwas anders. Aber bei der Windenergie ist es doch sehr, sehr männerdominiert, so wie ja in allen oder in vielen technischen Bereichen. Das sehen wir auch. Es nimmt zwar zu, dass Frauen mehr Ingenieurberufe ergreifen, aber in den rein technischen Berufen, da ist Frau Brems sicher eine Ausnahme. Da sind es ja immer noch bis heute nur gut 20%. In meiner Generation, in den 80er Jahren, waren wir auch noch sehr aktiv, was diese Gleichstellung und so weiter anging. Heute hat man das Gefühl, dass man nach so vielen Jahren, nach 40 Jahren, da auch noch nicht so viel weitergekommen ist, wie man weitergekommen sein müsste. Das ist eigentlich sehr traurig. Man merkt ja auch, die Politik kann einiges tun. Wir hatten ja mal gesagt, eigentlich wollen wir, dass auch das freiwillig geschieht, dass die Gesellschaft sich ändert, dass die Gesellschaft einsieht, wir müssen Frauen und Männer, wir müssen diese Diversität haben, was ja auch ganz massive Vorteile hat. Da gibt es genug Untersuchungen zu. Aber die Einführung von Quoten scheint wohl wirklich da nicht kann man nicht darauf verzichten. Das ist nun mal so. Auch die Regelung, dass Gremien oder auch Führungsetagen paritätisch besetzt werden, da muss man zum Teil halt wirklich dann auch politisch das regeln. Vielleicht nochmal jetzt von der Energieagentur aus. Wir sind ja sehr stark im Bereich der Information und Kommunikation. Ich merke immer wieder, dass man da auch eben als Frau in diesen eher technischen Bereichen auch für andere Frauen Ansprechpartnerin ist. Das kommt eigentlich immer ganz positiv. Also dadurch, dass man dann in diesem technischen Bereich unterwegs ist oder energiewirtschaftlichen Bereich, hat man auch einen besseren Zugang zu anderen Frauen. Und das muss auch mehr genutzt werden. Also auch ich bin sehr stark aktiv in diesen Frauennetzwerken. Heute Morgen wurde ja schon mal gesagt, dieses Frauen Women of Wind Energy, das ist jetzt umbenannt worden in Women of New Energy. Auch ein sehr starkes Netzwerk, wo ich auch schon als Mentorin tätig war, auch Mentoring-Programme. Sie fragten ja, was für Lösungsansätze gibt es. Also ein Mentoring ist auf jeden Fall ein guter Ansatz. Ich habe das auch sehr gerne mitgemacht, habe zu meiner Mentee bis heute noch Kontakt, obwohl das schon 4 Jahre her ist. Und das sind so Ansätze, die muss man auf jeden Fall stärken. Und auch, was schon gesagt wurde, man muss schon bei Schule und Studium anfangen, man muss schon in frühen Jahren anfangen, junge Frauen oder auch Mädchen für diese Bereiche zu interessieren, aber auch hinterher entlasten. Denn wenn Frauen dieses alle zusätzlich machen sollen, sich zusätzlich interessieren und engagieren sollen, müssen sie auch da den Rücken für frei haben und müssen in anderen Bereichen auch entlastet werden. Auch das sollte man nicht vergessen. So viel erstmal. Ich denke, in der weiteren Diskussion gibt es noch mehr Aspekte.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Let's now see what is happening. Let me rephrase. Let's see what's the perspective of another field, let's say. I'm very happy to introduce also Christine Lynch from Jwnet. Christine is actually the co-founder and executive director of Jwnet, and her professional journey over the past 23 years has been to advance the energy transition with renewable and energy efficiency, beginning at a regional level in her home country in Austria, then expanding to the European and then global level. So you have also, Christine, also some involvement in the energy efficiency part. Maybe you can also share with us your perspective on the issue. What is it that the governments and other stakeholders can do?
Thank you very much, Antonia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks for the invitation to this great discussion. I think a lot has already been said. I'm fully in agreement with Claudia that voluntary, you can't hear me? You can't hear me?
I think we can. I think it's an issue of the translation. I think that you can, if you turn back to the English channel, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe if you could speak up a little bit louder, that would help.
Okay. I will then increase the sound of my microphone. Is it better now?
Yeah. Now it is perfect.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I fully agree with what my predecessors have said. I think voluntary approaches are great, but without quotas, we will wait for ages to get to more gender balance. We come from a point of view that currently there are about 11.5 million people working in the renewable energy space. And according to IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, these numbers are going to increase to about 42 million jobs in 2050. If we know that today we have roughly 32% of women in the renewables field, we see that this is already better than what we have in oil and gas, where the share is only 22%. But it's very clear, and I'm absolutely sure that the energy transition and this industry is only going to thrive if we manage to get the best talents from both men and women in this area. And so this is not only a human right, because I think what we must, and some of the previous speakers have alluded to, it's very often women are not at the table when the decisions are taken. and that's why I think often energy policy is not really reflecting their needs. So we will have to get a more inclusive setup. But this is not only a human right, I would say, it's also economic, it makes economic sense, and it will be a key success factor of the industry to really thrive. I have to say that, I mean, as you mentioned, I work already quite long in this field. I will always remember that when I was in 1999 at one of my first international conferences on energy efficiency in one of the western regions of Austria, in Vorarlberg, which is close to Switzerland. At the conference with 100 participants, I was the only woman. And this does not happen anymore. So we get a bit more diverse pictures today. There are more women, but it's also very important that these women are put in networks, and this is where we come in. We have created Jwnet a couple of years ago, 2017. In the meantime, we have over 1,500 members from 100 plus countries. Because I think it's interesting to create networks. We work with regional, national women in energy networks, and we also see that sometimes women need a bit of more encouragement because they are often not as confident as their male counterparts. And so we have been quite successful with mentoring programs where we put a well-chosen mentor at the disposal of a mentee to guide them for a year in very specific aspects of their career. And we see that sometimes with a little boost of confidence, these women do succeed and take up new opportunities. And it is important that they get higher up, because that's where the decisions are taken. And then this will have a positive impact also on a more inclusive energy transition, which I think is the objective, to make this field advance more quickly than we've seen in the past.
Thank you very much, Christina. I would like actually to stay for a little bit longer on this discussion about the quotas that also Claudia mentioned earlier. In a previous conference, I think it was again organized by WWEA, I heard one of the presenters saying something like about the quotas, that those that say that quotas are not necessary are the ones that are actually confident enough to take the space and speak up. I would like to see whether you agree with this statement, whether indeed we do need the quotas for those of us who may not be that confident in taking the step further. I don't know who wants to go first, maybe Vipke or Katarina. We haven't heard Katarina.
Yeah, I can. Well, I think that's very interesting, and it's, of course, it's very, very multidimensional. And I was not in favor of quotas. So I studied mathematics and physics, and so it was the same for me. And I was not in favor for it. But what I have seen in the municipal development, all the cities, for example, having quotas, having women's empowerment programs in the German cities, I know, for example, now they have a higher share of women also on the policy level. And so we see the positive effect. I think we need it because it's not only to be encouraged to say something, it's more, it's to have time, to have resources, to have the experience, to have the network, I think that's very, very important. The quota are one very good instrument we could use, but we have many more instruments we should use, for example. So we have, but because I would also stress, maybe we should also a bit distinguish between women's empowerment and gender, because the gender approach is really so to have this intersectional approach, and that is what I also like of the study of Timo and Stefan, and what you have done by the Energieagentur, because you also considered people with migration background, people with different socio-economic status, for example. That's also very interesting. And women's empowerment, it's very, very, very important, but we see that we have to discuss with the men. So we have to discuss, and we have in Germany, also female ministers, they do not, for me, it's not, they do not do a great agricultural policy, for example, whatever. I think it's, but I think he needs a diversity. That's the point.
Thank you very much, Katharina. Maybe, Wiebke, do you want to add? I see.
Ja, gerne, weil ich komme ja von der Grünen Partei und wir haben ja, seitdem es uns gibt, eine Quote, und zwar die Quote, dass mindestens 50% Frauen in Gremien, auf Listen und so weiter vertreten sind. Von daher gehört das für mich quasi in meinem politischen Alltag bei den Grünen immer dazu. Und ich muss auch sagen, ich finde es genau richtig, weil es ist vielleicht einerseits dieser Aspekt, den du, Antonia, gerade genannt hast, dass es wirklich eher vielleicht die Frauen unterstützt, die vielleicht sonst so ein bisschen zurückhaltender sind. Ich glaube, dass aber da halt auch noch was anderes mit hintersteckt. Wir beobachten immer wieder, dass wo genau es passiert, dafür bin ich jetzt vielleicht nicht die Richtige, die das erklären kann, aber dass es halt schon so ist, dass viele junge Frauen das auch eher haben, dass sie eher zurückhaltend sind und nicht sofort nach vorne preschen und sagen, ich kann das, während Männer das im Durchschnitt schon häufiger tun und irgendwie so ein bisschen anders einfach auftreten. Und da hilft eine Quote. Und natürlich ist eine Quote nicht alleine irgendwie heilsbringend. Und natürlich ist es auch so, dass Frauen nicht per se irgendwie einen besseren Job machen. Das haben wir ja auch gerade gehört. Und ich gehe aber davon aus, dass wir sie brauchen, solange wir halt wirklich noch nicht die entsprechende Gleichberechtigung haben. Es gibt ja auch diesen Spruch, dass wir eine Gleichberechtigung erst dann geschafft haben, wenn die erste inkompetente Frau irgendwo in einem DAX-Konzern Chefin ist. Weil da gibt es nämlich definitiv auch überall auch inkompetente Männer und die Frauen müssen sich halt richtig hart durchbeißen. Und das ist einfach so, dass das da notwendig ist. Und ich glaube, wir brauchen halt wirklich diese Unterstützung durch eine Quote, aber natürlich auch nicht als einzige Lösung, sondern als Ergänzung auch die Netzwerke und ich sag mal auch in der Grünen Partei, die so feministisch ist und so quasi an vielen Stellen gleichberechtigt ist, ist es auch für Frauen trotzdem immer mal wieder notwendig, sich durchzusetzen oder darauf zu sagen, wir haben aber eine Quote und wir müssen das angucken. Auch da ist man nicht davor befreit, dass auch da nicht Männerstrukturen, die halt in der Politik, in der Wirtschaft einfach sehr da sind, Männerspielregeln sind das, wonach quasi gespielt wird in der Politik und in der Wirtschaft. Und die gibt es auch bei uns und deswegen muss man auch da das immer weiter hochhalten.
Claudia, I think you have something to say, please.
Ja, ich würde auch gerne mal ergänzen, also ich halte die Quote auch eher so für eine Übergangsmaßnahme. Ich hoffe halt, dass es nur für den Übergang notwendig ist. Vielleicht sollte man noch mal einen Aspekt bedenken. Es ist ja nach wie vor so, dass Frauen in der Regel den Hauptteil der Erziehungsarbeit übernehmen, wenn sie Kinder haben und auch häufig eine Zeit lang aussetzen. Also ich habe selber auch 3 erwachsene Kinder inzwischen. Zum Glück hatte ich ganz gute Unterstützung durch meinen Ehemann, aber ich bin zum Beispiel bei der Energieagentur. Wir sind 3 Frauen da in der Leitungsetage und glaube ich 24 Männer und ich bin die einzige von den Frauen, die überhaupt Kinder hat. Also es ist immer schwierig, überhaupt seinen beruflichen Weg konsequent durchzugehen, wenn man halt auch eine Auszeit hat. Da muss natürlich auch nochmal, wir hatten ja gesagt, was kann die Politik tun, auch nochmal ansetzen, dass einfach hier die Vereinbarkeit von Familie und Berufsleben besser organisiert wird, flexiblere Arbeitszeiten, Unterstützung bei der Betreuung, Homeoffice und so weiter. Und man sieht ja jetzt auch wieder in der Krise, in der Pandemie, wer kümmert sich ums Homeoffice, wer bleibt zu Hause, nicht ums Homeoffice, ums Homeschooling, habe ich auch ganz stark bei meinen Mitarbeiterinnen erlebt, wie die am Rande ihrer Kapazitäten waren und in der Regel zu 90% dieses Ganze übernommen haben. Und das führt natürlich dazu, dass es Frauen, nicht nur, dass sie schüchterner vielleicht sind oder das nicht sagen wollen. Ich kenne viele Frauen, die wollen unbedingt ganz viel und dann kommt die Erziehungszeit und dann wollen sie zurück in den Beruf, dann kommt das zweite Kind vielleicht und dann sind mehrere Jahre ins Land gegangen und es wird ihnen nicht unbedingt einfach nicht leicht gemacht. Also ich denke mal, dass das nochmal ein Aspekt ist, der da ganz wichtig ist und der sich dann auch langfristig auch in so Projekten wie Bürgerenergiegenossenschaft auswirken kann, wenn es da bessere Regelungen gibt.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Indeed, now with the whole COVID situation makes some of the problems, let's say, a little bit more extreme. Having to work by having next to you your children is not always the easiest thing to do. Maybe I will actually try to get one step back before we continue on the different tools and methods that we can think about the issue and how we can indeed make the space, give the space for more a gender balanced approach on the energy transition. I would like to add a level of complexity, let's say, in this discussion, because we see that slowly there is some kind of shift towards tenders. The framework gets more complex. So we see, I think earlier I followed, let me see the name, I followed the previous session and it was this discussion, I'm sorry, it was Miss Susanna Kronhammer from Windfang about the project development, and she was asked what does she think about the about the tenders. And yeah, back then something like this was not there. Now we have the tendering coming into the picture. We have more complex projects that have to do with all the flexibility related automation, smart meters and things like this. How do you think that what does this mean for the participation of a woman in the energy field? Who wants to actually go first with this? If any.
Meinen Sie, was die Ausschreibungen jetzt?
Sure.
Die Ausschreibungen bedeuten?
Yes.
Okay, ja, vielleicht kann ich es ja mal versuchen. Ich denke mal, dass die Ausschreibungen dazu führen, dass es ja einfach schwieriger ist, Projekte umzusetzen oder Projekte an den Markt zu bekommen. Sie müssen ja die komplette Genehmigung haben und können dann erst in die Ausschreibung gehen und müssen dann ja auch noch den wirtschaftlichen Aspekt berücksichtigen, dass sie eventuell günstig anbieten müssen. Das ist natürlich, was auch mit Risiko behaftet ist. Und ich kann mir vorstellen, dass es da auch nochmal wieder Einschränkungen gibt, weil diese Investitionsrisiken nicht unbedingt dann so stark übernommen werden wollen von Frauen. Es ist ja auch allgemein so, dass meist ja Männer über mehr Geld verfügen und auch risikobereiter sind, was die Finanzierung von solchen Projekten angeht. Also da kann ich mir vorstellen, dass das so ein bisschen abschreckend wirkt. Ansonsten wüsste ich da jetzt auch keinen weiteren Einfluss.
Sure. I think that there's also like a saying that maybe tenders are actually misogynistic in a sense. They're like too complex and they're pushing women out of the game, so to say. I think that Christine wants to say something. Please, Christine.
Thank you. Well, I don't know whether I fully agree, because I mean, I don't think that you can automatically take a market instrument and have and reflect back on the role of women, because I think we must also stop thinking that the women will only participate in the small community-run projects. They also have their place at the table in the big companies, in the big utility companies that will run these projects. I think in general, it's probably more challenging for the smaller projects to get to participate in the market. But overall, I would not say that tenders disfavor the participation of women. I think that's a bit too simplistic in my mind. And on the other hand, Jwnet has issued a study last year where we clearly show that companies with diverse leadership are a better fit, they make better profits because they're a bit more risk adverse. Sometimes, and it's a well-known fact that women often take the more holistic picture into account. But I would argue that projects run by men and women are probably in the long term the more successful ones. So that's why I would not automatically make the link that the tenders are bad for equal participation of women. I think that's a bit too simplistic in my mind.
Thank you. I see Katarina wants to add, please.
Yeah, I would like to stress it what Christine said, because I guess there is the point is that tenders, big players are benefiting. So what you have said, because they have more equity and they are able to deal with the equity what is needed for tenders. So that's one effect, I guess. And but we see other effects which are where we have problems. So in Germany, for example, in our county of Bavaria, so we have, for example, a regulation on wind energy with a certain distance, and not only in Bavaria, but also in other counties. So we haven't seen any wind development so far because of the political framework. It's not an answer to the question, but I think it's so one point is a stakeholder, what we see, and for the development of wind projects, what you need expertise, and we have the expertise. So we have women and men have the expertise to do it. And for the tender, we need the equity. And so here's a big players, they have more equity, that's a point. And of course, the third point is you have the geographical fittings that you have enough space for wind energy, for example. And so I would agree, I don't see the relationship. And you also ask in terms of digitalization and smart meter, if women are, well, I think that's the opposite, maybe it's a big scale and small scale, but so both is needed. So we from Bündnis Bürgerenergie, we are favoring a decentralized energy transition, but we will see which central parts we will still need. And well, I only can repeat that women have the knowledge. They are able to deal with it. They are not in the network. So we see, for example, in the energy sector, today we talked a lot about electricity. For example, in the heating and cooling sector, we see less women than in the electricity sector, for example. That's even worse, for example. So again, we need all the instruments, what Christine said, like mentoring programs and empowerment and quotas and political will. And what we have to take time and budget. So it's not for free. So we have to do also gender budgeting, for example, and to see where the money flows. And here a last example, for example, so in Germany, we had recovery programs of Corona. And one program was for electromobility, what is great overall, but we have seen that mostly women benefited from this funding because they are the buyers, they are the major part of the users of electromobility. It's okay, but it's so important to see, is that the target of the program? Do I want to have a just and a fair program, for example? And so it would be very important to do like a gender budgeting.
Thank you, Katarina. Thank you for confirming that no matter how complex things can get or difficult in terms of competition and the expertise needed, we can still join this discussion. I would like now to ask you, because to get back now that we have maybe the broader picture in mind of the energy system and how it's gonna get in the future. Maybe if we zoom, let's say, to specific actors, we've touched a lot about the issue of policy, let's say, the policy, the national and local level maybe. But what about the media? What do you think about the media? How can they actually support the involvement of more women? And maybe better, I agree with the previous reframing of the discussion of a gender balanced energy transition. who would like to say something about this stakeholder? Wiebke? Sure.
Ja, ich finde, als Politik ist es immer schwierig, Medien zu kritisieren. Aber wenn ich jetzt mal so eine Frage bekomme, gehe ich da gerne drauf ein, weil natürlich Medien eine sehr große Rolle haben. Und da würde ich es jetzt nicht nur auf wirklich Nachrichten beziehen, sondern auch auf Unterhaltungsmedien, auf Film, Fernsehen und so weiter. Und da möchte ich auch schon mal quasi einen Schritt vorher anfangen. Wie viele Ingenieurinnen kennen wir denn, die irgendwie mal in einem Film oder in einer Serie, in einer täglichen Serie irgendwie mal vorkommen? Also ich glaube, da fängt es einfach mit so einem gewissen Frauenbild an, das schon etwas schwierig ist, dass das einfach häufig in Klischees gedacht wird, auch immer noch, dass es einfacher ist in Filmen, in Serien, da so Klischees einfach zu erfüllen, weil das weil man meint vielleicht, weil es für die Menschen dann auch einfacher ist zu verstehen oder ähnliches. Ich finde, das ist der erste Schritt und da müssen wir eigentlich hinkommen, dass das halt auch breiter aufgestellt wird. Und dann ist eben der nächste Aspekt, was Frauen dann im Energiebereich machen und dass man Aspekte nicht auch immer, wie gesagt, wie ich das häufig auch erlebe, eher ins Lächerliche zieht, dass man einfach sieht, dass Frauen eine unterschiedliche Rolle im Klimaschutz spielen, dass sie sich unterschiedlich verhalten und dass auch Klimawandel eine unterschiedlichen Auswirkungen auf sie hat. Und das wäre dann wieder, finde ich, ein Teil der öffentlich-rechtlichen Medien oder der Presse, dann diese Aspekte auch noch deutlicher mal hervorzuheben und das nicht einfach nur hinten runterfallen zu lassen. Das ist halt schon was ich wichtig finde. Ich kann vielleicht noch einen Punkt ergänzen. Wir haben ja hier im Landtag leider auch die rechtspopulistische AfD, die ja auch ein sehr rückwärtsgewandtes Frauenbild hat, die, als wir mal einen Antrag zu dem Thema hatten, was Klimaschutz dass eben Klimawandel Frauen stärker betrifft als Männer und dann wurde es eben von denen ins Lächerliche gezogen, ob das deswegen wäre, weil wir Frauen ja immer kältere Hände und Füße hätten. Das finde ich ist nur so ein Beispiel von extremen Darstellungen, aber die gibt es halt einfach auch. Ich glaube, dagegen können wir nicht direkt ankommen, weil die sowieso in ihrem Klimabild und Frauenbild woanders sind. Aber das nur, um einmal zu nehmen, ich glaube, dass auch solche Gedanken in der Mitte der Gesellschaft sind an der Stelle, ja. Und dass es eine Aufgabe von Medien ist, dafür zu sorgen, zu sagen, wie sind denn die Fakten, was kann man tun, was ist die Rolle von Männern und von Frauen, wer fährt eher die dickeren Autos, wer bewegt sich eher mit dem Fahrrad vorwärts und so weiter. Das, finde ich, gehört als schon dabei. Dazu und dann eben auch wie gesagt, die Rolle der Unterhaltungsmedien ist auch nicht zu unterschätzen.
I completely agree. Indeed, we should also broaden the discussion in terms of the media and what type of media. I think that Claudia wanted to add maybe, or was it?
Ja, ich glaube, Katharina auch gleich noch, aber gerade noch dieser Aspekt, der ist mir auch wichtig, dass ja Medien auch noch mehr sind. Also ich erlebe das häufig, was jetzt so diese branchenspezifische Kommunikation angeht oder auch Prospekte oder irgendwelche Homepages oder sonst was. Das ist ja auch ein Medium, dass dort so eine geschlechtergerechte Kommunikation eigentlich noch nicht vorherrscht. Wenn man sich Texte liest, auch sind sehr technisch formuliert häufig. Wenn man Fotos sieht oder Piktogramme, da ist es doch immer noch sehr, auch sehr männlich dominiert. Oder man hat jetzt gerne auch immer so die eine Alibi-Frau dann dabei. Aber letztlich, wenn man das Ganze sich doch mal kritisch betrachtet, dann ist es so, also ich kenne es halt von der Windenergiebranche her, dann dominieren dort immer noch in der Kommunikation die Männerbilder und auch wenn Frauen, also wenn jetzt irgendwelche Diskussionsrunden sind, ich meine, heute sind wir hier 5 Frauen, es geht ja auch um das Thema Frauen, aber auch da ist es so, ich war kürzlich noch hier auch nochmal wieder zu einer Podiumsdiskussion eingeladen, da war auch die Luisa Neubauer bei, das fand ich wirklich klasse, also es gab eine junge Frau, eine alte Frau, die alte war ich, die junge war sie und dann gab es 5 alte Männer, also 60 plus oder sogar teilweise über 70. Und das erlebt man immer wieder oder erlebe ich auch immer wieder gerne, wird man dann als Alibi-Frau dazu geholt. Oh, da ist eine aus der Windbranche Branche, die nehmen wir dazu, aber letztlich überwiegen dann immer die Männer und mit einer Alibi-Frau ist man dann schon ganz gut dabei. Und das ist ja alles Kommunikation, die halt eben auch dieses Klischeebild dann nochmal unterstützt.
I see Christine wants to say something, but also Katarina. Maybe I will start with Katarina and then Christina, I'm coming to you.
Yeah, well, I would also confirm it's the point what they communicate and disseminate and how they do it. So I start how they communicate. So it's overall the communication, what you have mentioned, Claudia, so gender just communication. So when screening, that's overall a point, so we can improve a lot to have a gender just style of communication. That's one point. The second point is also really to be aware of our stereotypes, and so really to try to communicate in a gender just way. And all because what we communicate is in our head, is what we are thinking. So that's very, very important. And I would assume that it's low-hanging fruits to start with gender just communication for most of us. That's the first point. The second point, what is communicated? We have a lot of expertise on gender and women's empowerment. Now we have the new study presented today. So we have organizations working on gender and energy. And so we are discussing about different dimensions of gender and energy. A lot is unpaid is care work, it's unpaid care work, a lot is workforce, for example, so women in the MINT sector. One point is how many women are in decision-making positions. And so it's also access to energy and etc. And one dimension is, for example, it's androcentrism, that we are in a male-dominated world. So, for example, the media, they could really transport and disseminate all the information which is available, and to raise awareness and to give them a higher priority, for example. And yeah.
Thank you, Katarina. Christine?
Thank you very much, Antonia. I fully agree. I think that the role of mainstream media must not be underestimated. But I also would like to point out that I think it's important that we showcase role models, because at least in our work, what we see is that very often women find it a bit discouraging that they don't have role models in this energy field, and by showing them women that are there, I think that gives them further courage. And we have nowadays, we should not forget also the power of social media. I mean, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. We are accompanying our mentoring program a lot with also social media campaigns, showcasing the achievements of these women, and I think that can encourage others. We have also last year, for example, launched a series of women energy entrepreneurs, because we find that in many parts of the world those are not yet so common, and maybe by seeing that how others have done, and often I find women are then also more willing to share the challenges that they faced on their journey. This then gives encouragement to others to follow their way, or also pursue the development of their own ideas.
Thank you very much, Christine. And indeed, you brought back the issue of role models and the mentoring. I think that this has been indeed one of the things that has worked also for me personally. I have to say that once you see a person and then you really feel like, okay, she's doing this, she's behaving in a different way than maybe 90% of the rest of the group, let's say. And then I feel like, okay, if she can do it, why not? I can also do this. So I don't know who wants to, I don't know, maybe Claudia, do you want to say something about this? How can we indeed focus and highlight specific women actually that can inspire more women to get involved?
Ja, Sie sprachen gerade das Mentoring an, hatte ich ja auch eben schon erwähnt, dieses, was ich da bei den Women of Wind Energy mitgemacht habe. fand ich eine sehr gute Sache, sollte auf jeden Fall auch noch verstärkt gemacht werden. Es ist ja auch gar nicht so viel Einsatz, der da gefragt ist, also von den erfahrenen Frauen. Also da kann man wirklich erst denkt man, was soll ich der jungen Frau jetzt raten, aber alleine diese Vorbildfunktion oder das Gefühl zu geben, ja, auch trotz Familie, sag ich mal, oder kann man es schaffen, dass man halt auch im Beruf seine Frau steht, kann man auch relativ gut oder relativ weit kommen. Das ist einfach schön, dass man sowas dann auch zeigen kann. Und das ist ja so eine Vorbildfunktion, wie ja gerade gesagt wurde. Aber vielleicht auch nochmal diese Best-Practice-Beispiele, die wir ja heute hatten. Also ich fand dieses mit dem Windfang-Projekt zum Beispiel, fand ich total spannend. Solche Projekte, die sollten unbedingt auch noch mal ein bisschen mehr öffentlich gemacht werden, dass dadurch einfach Frauen auch noch mal Vorbilder bekommen oder auch andere Frauen einen Namen bekommen, sagen, jo, die haben es geschafft und das können wir auch. Also solche Best-Practice-Beispiele sind für mich neben Vorbildern auch noch mal ein ganz wichtiger Aspekt dabei.
Darf ich, weil ich weiß gar nicht, wer jetzt alles die Fragen sehen kann, die hier im Chat gestellt werden, aber weil es quasi ja eine Frage gab, wer entscheidet denn darüber, was dann veröffentlicht wird? Ja, ich möchte jetzt nicht so verstanden werden, dass wir jetzt irgendwie Vorgaben irgendwie für alle Medien und so weiter machen. Ich glaube, da bedarf es leider auch wieder eines gewissen Prozesses, ja, wo man einfach dafür sorgen muss. Ich glaube, alleine dadurch, wenn mehr Frauen Drehbücher schreiben, wenn mehr Regisseurinnen dabei sind, dann entstehen, glaube ich, schon mehr und mehr einfach auch starke Rollen, starke Filme, starke Serien, wo es nicht nur irgendwie in Dialogen zwischen zwei Frauen immer um Männer geht, sondern auch um andere Themen gehen kann. Ich glaube, das ist ein Prozess, den man dann auch wieder unterstützen muss, von politischer Seite, vielleicht durch, es gibt ja Filmförderung und ähnliches. Das heißt, auch da darauf zu achten, dass man da eine Geschlechtergerechtigkeit hat. Und bei anderen Sachen würde ich eher darauf gehen, zu sagen, ich glaube, dass auch da wieder die Kommunikation von öffentlichen Stellen, von Verwaltungen, von Ministerien und so weiter, die muss vorbildhaft sein. Die muss quasi schon sich selber auch als Vorgabe geben, dass sie geschlechtergerecht ist. Und dann kann man eben mit gutem Beispiel vorangehen und dann könnten nach und nach eben auch die entsprechenden Medien nachziehen. Anders stelle ich mir das ehrlich gesagt etwas schwierig vor, weil wir ja eine freie Presse haben und das ist auch alles in Ordnung so, das soll auch so bleiben. Aber ich glaube, dass man da einfach an manchen Stellen mit gutem Beispiel vorangehen muss und sich dann vielleicht auch wieder was verändert. Das bedeutet aber, dass man das jetzt nicht innerhalb von ein paar Monaten hinbekommt.
I agree with what you just said, Vicky. And talking about the leading by example, I'm thinking also one of the other comments here in the chat regarding the participation of feminist men, let's say, in this kind of discussions that we're having. We had an internal discussion, I have to say, next Tuesday, we're organizing a webinar with Susanna. And we were trying to see how we can actually indeed invite also men to stand up and actually talk about these gender female issues, because these are not actually female, our perspective is that these are not female issues, but this is a topic that everyone should be able to speak up and present. How do you see this? I think Christine wants to say something.
Yes, thank you, Antonia. I think this is very important that gender balance is not a women-only issue. It's an issue that concerns both men and women, and we do need the men to acknowledge this. And I have to say that there are many men out there. I mean, we see that they volunteer as mentors in our programs, though we have a majority of women, but sometimes on very specific topics, we also reach out to men, and they see the need. I think also they realize it's much more fun having a mixed panel. It's just not so much fun having I like to discuss with all you ladies, but in general, I think it's quite refreshing to have a mixture on panels of men and women. And I think the men think the same. In our own organization, we had this discussion and we decided that on our own board, we will have only women. but we'll have an advisory board that is composed of both women and men. So we do take this into account, and I have to say that there are lots of champions out there that value the importance of the subject and also really actively support women in their careers.
Katharina, please.
Yes, I agree. I guess, well, there is, for example, one initiative of the United Nations is the MENALs, so the male panels. And so a lot of German organizations, for example, so they, as a point is not to participate in a only one sex panel. And I think that overall it's a good initiative, and really to have diversified panels on different topics, that's very important. But the second point is really so gender at the moment. So what you have said, Wiebke, we see a gender backlash at the moment because of right-wing development, for example. That so we have at the moment less women in German policy decision-making positions than 10 years beforehand, for example. And so it means that we have to, yes, gender needs to become normality, and it's not always a topic. It should be relevant all the time. And for example, for planning a wind power plant, so you have your cost calculation, you have to need your targets, you have your technology, and you have gender as a target. And so I think at the moment it's always something very additional, and it needs to become our normal daily life. And so it's very important to discuss it in the whole society, so with women and men and all genders, and to do a lot of gender empowerment, so to provide knowledge about this topic. So, and also here we are, it's a point with the data, to collect disaggregated data. And what is also great now with the study, what we have seen today, that we have the data of Nordrhein-Westfalen about Bürgerenergiegesellschaften.
Thank you, Katharina. Indeed, the research and access to data is also very crucial. Claudia, you want to add something on this?
Ja, ganz kurz, ich habe im Chat gerade noch gelesen, da kam ja nochmal der Beitrag, es sollte jetzt nicht nur die Diversität bezüglich der Geschlechter bestehen, sondern auch Alter, Herkunft, Bildungsstand und so weiter. Ich denke, das darf man auch nicht vergessen. Wir haben ja auch einen ganz geringen Anteil an Leuten, Frauen, Männern mit Migrationshintergrund, die sich jetzt auch beteiligen. Und auch die Altersstruktur, das fand ich sehr interessant heute Morgen. Also es hat eigentlich das bestätigt, was ich seit 25 Jahren erlebe, dass es meist Rentner waren, die sich engagiert haben. Also 60 plus, ich bin jetzt auch schon 60 plus, egal, aber trotzdem erlebe ich das wirklich seit oder fast 30 Jahren, dass in der Energiebranche, ob es Gegner oder Befürworter sind. Also sowohl diejenigen, die Energie betreiben, also EE-Anlagen, als auch die dagegen sind in der Regel wirklich zu größten Teil alte Männer, also 55, 60 plus. Das ist schon sehr stark auffällig, und ich denke, auch da sollte man nochmal schauen, dass man da eine bessere Diversität hinbekommt. Und da sehe ich schon eine Hoffnung, weil gerade jetzt ja auch, wenn man Fridays for Future sieht, dort haben wir ja einen Anteil von 75% bei manchen Veranstaltungen Frauen, und es sind junge Leute. Und das macht mir persönlich, macht mir Hoffnung, dass sich da einiges ändern wird in den nächsten Jahren.
Sure, indeed. It's an interesting thing that there is research apparently that women are more involved, more active when it comes to climate than when it comes to energy. Maybe because energy is perceived as a more technical issue. I wonder what's the reason for such a thing. It's, for me, the one led in my case to the other. I wanted to actually focus on the diversity that was mentioned, because indeed I fully support, and I think that we have an agreement regarding the importance of diversifying the field in terms of gender, of education, migration, all the different types of backgrounds. But the very concept of gender is a multidimensional concept as such. It's a kind of a spectrum. And I wanted to ask you, how do you engage, how do you communicate in a gender just way without falling too easily into the woman only trap, let's say? I don't know if that was clear, but if we see gender as a spectrum, how can we really talk about, you know, a gender balanced energy transition and not only woman empowerment? Who would like to react to this? I know it's maybe a difficult question. We have had this kind of discussions. It's difficult. Christine?
Well, I'll give it a try. I would see this a little bit with the image of the scale of the balance, and at the moment things are rather imbalanced, and in order to get them into equilibrium, we probably have to emphasize a little bit the female side, so to get things a bit more balanced. I don't think we are yet there that we already have to worry about that the men are going to be underrepresented, especially in the energy field. But I do agree that, of course, you need to always highlight the aspect that we need both men and women at the table to take the decisions, because it's just something that concerns both sexes.
Katharina?
Yeah, maybe two aspects. The first one, of course, we have talked about it as a benefits of a gender just energy transition. So to see it, we have more actors, more engagement, more empowerment, more expertise. So it's just, I think that we have really benefits for all. That's one point. And the second point, I think that because gender and women's empowerment, it's not bashing of men. So I think that's very important to stress, because sometimes we see a bit of resistance. But of course, what we see, so we have to share the cake. At the moment, we have only a very few women on high level positions in the energy companies and also on the political level. And so if we want to have more women, so there will be less men. And I think that's a very important discussion we have to do. So it's also multidimensional, and but overall we see a lot of benefits, and I think it's very important. It's very interesting because at the moment the topic of energy and gender, it's rising and it's becoming more attraction and interest. And the question is it because of it's a human right? Is it because we need more actors? We need more expertise, for example. And is it because of acceptance? Because we think, for example, to increase also the share of women in the whole stakeholder group, maybe to have more acceptance for wind energy, whatever. So I think that we have to have a very open-minded discussion.
Wiebke, you want to add something? Sure.
Ich möchte nochmal auf das Thema Sprache eingehen, weil das ist, glaube ich, ganz wichtig. Ich persönlich, weil ich Elektrotechnik-Ingenieurin bin, habe immer so einen ersten Impuls, wenn es heißt, wir müssen weniger technisch sprechen oder kommunizieren, damit die Frauen das verstehen. Da habe ich jetzt persönlich immer ein Problem mit, weil ich finde, das ist auch ein bisschen zu verallgemeinernd. Aber ich glaube, was klar ist, dass wir einfach einfacher, allgemeinverständlicher kommunizieren müssen insgesamt. Weil ich glaube, das ist was sicherlich auch eine eher intellektuell gefärbte Partei wie die Grünen genauso lernen müssen wie auch andere, dass wir ganz häufig zu sehr in unseren Strukturen denken und auch kommunizieren. Und auch wenn es darum geht, eben insgesamt die Diversität zu erhöhen, dann ist eine verständlichere Sprache sorgt auch dafür, dass beispielsweise mehr Migranten dabei sind, dass Leute, die eben nicht vielleicht studiert haben oder nicht was im Sprachbereich studiert haben, eher abgeholt werden, weil eben nicht so viel Fremdwörter vorkommen und so weiter. Das heißt, das ist, glaube ich, insgesamt etwas, was viel, viel wichtiger wird, nochmal besser und mehr in Bildern zu kommunizieren und die Leute da abzuholen in ihrer Realität und es alles nicht zu fachlich zu sehen. So würde ich es vielleicht eher dann auch sehen. Und ich glaube, dass wir dann auch wieder mehr Frauen insgesamt erreichen.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Indeed, I think we've covered the issue of language. Let's say we've touched about some structural issues. I would like us to go back maybe to indeed the more structural issues. We've discussed about the quotas. We discussed a little bit about the the role models and the inspirational, let's say, processes from a woman to another woman. I would like to ask you for maybe you have some other specific examples of some structural, let's say, interventions that could support this transition to a more energy just and gender just energy transition. Christine?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there are many. I mean, we had it already often. Just before we started our call, I had a call with an international financing institution, and they all start to develop knowledge on how to also integrate gender aspects in their policies. I think we need more training on these issues, and very often when the people hear, oh, it needs to be now gender balance, they just think that, I mean, and often this is now a requirement, and they shouldn't just tick the box, but they should really make some meaningful interventions there. So training is definitely needed. And I would also underline what Claudia said before. It's really important to have the framework conditions, to have family-friendly work policies, working times. I have myself, just before I switched off the camera, because the nanny came back with my 15-month-old daughter. And here in Austria, I'm thinking we're a bit behind, because childcare starts with 18 months. So, I mean, I'm in the lucky position that I can afford to privately pay somebody who takes care of my daughter, but women in general don't really have this flexibility to decide how they organize their lives, and I think the important thing is that these structures are there. The way on how people use them and the way they set up their lives should be their own decision. I'm by no means saying that everybody could start to work immediately after they had their children, but they should have at least the possibility to decide on how to go about this. And there is always, as Claudia has mentioned, there is this in the back of women's mind. If they are too long staying out of the job, then of course they might miss the train to a certain extent. So this accompanying framework, and this is not specific to the energy sector, but this is absolutely crucial, because without this and it's not only the taking care of children, which often is more done by women, but it's also then coming back with taking care of the elderly. Also, this is often in the hands of women, and there needs to be a spotlight on how responsibilities are shared, and also how support offers are in place to give the women the chance to actively and progressively participate in the economy and pursuing their careers.
Thank you very much, Christine. Katarina wants to add something.
Yeah,
please?
maybe.
And then Claudia. Claudia will get back to you afterwards.
Just two points to add. So I mentioned already the gender budgeting. I think that's an instrument really to have more justice and to see where the money flows, because where the money is, so we have the power and the decision-making power, for example. So that in other countries, as far as I know, so it's more common. In Germany, we have some problems with the gender budgeting, also on municipal level. That would be so interesting, for example, to spend money for infrastructure like streets and roads, like sports, football, whatever. So who is benefiting from this budget? And that's also very important for the energy sector. And the second point is talking about energy poverty. So we have a lot of grant programs, for example, for low-income households, also in Germany and other countries in Europe. And we know from the statistics and studies that women are more affected of energy poverty than men. And we do not see at all one gender dimension in all the funding programs, for example, for low-income households. So there are some programs in Germany with Caritas, but it's really, so we have the information, we know the instruments, we have to apply them, but we have to apply them regularly, and we have to do monitoring and evaluation.
Very important points, and indeed the gender budgeting is also a very crucial tool that you mentioned earlier, Katharina. Claudia?
Ja, vielleicht noch ein weiterer Aspekt. Es muss ja jetzt auch nicht immer das große Projekt sein, was umgesetzt wird. Ich denke, man muss auch mehr nochmal so einen Praxis- oder Lebensbezug in Bezug auf Energiefragen herstellen. Es gibt ja auch im kleineren Bereich, im häuslichen Bereich, wenn wir davon ausgehen, ist nun mal so, dass Frauen nach wie vor auch sehr stark auf den häuslichen oder zum Teil auf den häuslichen Bereich auch noch bezogen sind. Auch da kann man ja eine ganze Menge erreichen, indem man vielleicht durch eine PV-Anlage, durch eine Kleinwindanlage und so weiter da auch nochmal eigene Energie erzeugt und diese halt dann nutzt. Also ich denke, das sind auch so Punkte, die bislang viel zu wenig auch noch gefördert werden. Vielleicht kann da Wiebke noch was zu sagen. Ich denke, dieses dezentrale Nutzung von Energie, auch da könnte man viel mehr machen, auch wie gesagt durch Förderprogramme, durch Kommunikation, durch Aufklärung, durch Best Practice und so weiter. Wir versuchen das immer schon von der Energieagentur, da auch vernünftige Beispiele zu finden, die man dann veröffentlichen kann zur Nachahmung. Aber da könnte man sicherlich auch noch mal aktiv was für tun. Also jetzt nicht nur die Frauen, auch die Männer, völlig klar. Aber auch in diesem Zusammenhang finde ich das noch mal einen wichtigen Aspekt, den man vielleicht noch mal diskutieren könnte.
Darf ich ergänzen?
Sure.
Ich würde gerne noch mal auf ein paar Aspekte kurz eingehen, weil ich finde, ich hatte ja in der Zusammenfassung auch der Studie gesehen, dass ja mehr Frauen sich auch an Solarbürgerprojekten beteiligen als zum Beispiel an Windenergie. Und ich weiß nicht, ob das schon auch heute im Laufe des Tages diskutiert wurde, aber ich kann mir vorstellen, dass es eben auch vielleicht damit zu tun hängt, es ist was Kleineres, es sind vielleicht auch kleinere Finanzbeträge und so weiter, mit denen man sich da beteiligen kann. Von daher ist es, glaube ich, zum einen sinnvoll, auch so ein bisschen dafür zu sorgen, vielleicht auch bei denen, die solche Projekte organisieren, das nochmal rüberzubringen, zu sagen, wie wichtig es auch ist, dass sich auch Menschen mit einem kleineren Budget beteiligen können. Und wir haben ja auch das Problem, dass nicht nur in der Energiebranche generell wenig Frauen sind, auch in der Finanzbranche sind ja wenig Frauen. Das hängt ja dann auch wieder mit zusammen. Oder auch mit Finanzen beschäftigen sich wohl im Allgemeinen ja auch weniger Frauen direkt damit. Das heißt, da haben wir das eine Problem, an das wir rangehen. Das zweite ist, nochmal speziell auch immer drauf zu gucken, wie man vielleicht gerade Veranstaltungen auch für Frauen machen kann. Also wir haben das bei uns jetzt in der Landtagsfraktion auch mal gemacht, wirklich ein Webinar ausschließlich für Frauen zu machen, was eigentlich wir als eine richtige, echte Veranstaltung gedacht hatten, wo es schon nochmal eine andere Geschichte ist, wenn wirklich 100% Frauen im Raum sind und nicht nur irgendwie 10%, wie das auch bei meinen Energieveranstaltungen zum Teil ist, aber auch online macht es einen Unterschied. Also dieses Angebot mal zu machen, zum einen als Netzwerk, aber einfach so als losen Austausch, wo man einfach eine Resonanz bekommt und merkt, das Bedürfnis ist da und dabei dann auch mal zu überlegen, nicht nur bei solchen Veranstaltungen, ich glaube, das bräuchte man eben auch mal vielleicht für solche Bürgerenergieprojekte zu sagen, diese Veranstaltung richtet sich speziell an Frauen und auch mal zu überlegen, zu welchen Uhrzeiten biete ich eigentlich Veranstaltungen an. Also das ist jetzt wieder das Typische, was wir eben auch schon mal angesprochen hatten. Wir können nicht mal eben ändern, dass nun mal Frauen sich hauptsächlich noch um Kinder und um andere Aspekte auch mit kümmern. Deswegen muss man überlegen, ist man dann vielleicht abends um 20 Uhr irgendwie total fix und foxy und kann einfach nicht mehr oder um 18 Uhr ist man eben mit Abendessen machen beschäftigt. Also welche Uhrzeiten oder welche Möglichkeiten kann man eben anders einfach auch mal anbieten, außer dem Üblichen. Und die anderen Aspekte, die auch Katharina angesprochen hat, ist ja richtig zu sagen, man muss sich die sozialen Aspekte auch mit angucken. Ich möchte da nur noch einen Punkt ergänzen, wo wir es ja auch schwierig immer haben, ist, dass ja gerade alleinerziehende Frauen eben von gerade Schwierigkeiten, von finanziellen Schwierigkeiten betroffen sind, die man dann wieder auch mit Energiearmut beispielsweise beziehen kann. Also das heißt, wenn wir von politischer Seite aus soziale Probleme wirklich auch mal mehr so betrachten würden, wie sie nämlich sind und auch mal hingucken, wo sind Männer, wo sind Frauen irgendwie besonders betroffen, dann würde das, glaube ich, auch automatisch in anderen Bereichen wie beispielsweise der Energie auch schon helfen. Ich glaube, deswegen ist es insgesamt einfach eine Schwierigkeit, dass diese getrennte Betrachtung, die einfach fehlt und einfach mal zu sagen, ohne dass wir einen Riss zwischen Männern und Frauen machen wollen oder dass wir wirklich nur, ist ja auch immer ein Thema, nur die beiden Geschlechter haben, aber schon nochmal genau hinzugucken, wo gibt es eigentlich welche Schwierigkeiten, wo gibt es welche Voraussetzungen und wie können wir damit umgehen. Das ist einfach also sehr wichtig und wird in der Politik allgemein bisher noch zu wenig gemacht. Und deswegen bräuchte man da wirklich neben den endlich stärkeren gesetzlichen Vorgaben eben auch das, also zum Gender Mainstreaming, zum Gender Budgeting, nicht nur einfach was man mal irgendwo reinschreibt, sondern was man auch wirklich tatsächlich umsetzt auf allen Ebenen.
Thank you very much, Vibke. I think that I will use this as for a last round of comments. If I could get one strong statement from you, like what is this one thing that we should do, that we should be doing to indeed get the gender balanced energy transition, and especially to get more women also in the community energy, in the smaller, let's say the bottom-up approach to the energy transition. Who wants to go first? We can go with the typical popcorn method. The one who feels ready, just speak up, unless you want me to. Okay, I see Christine.
I like the popcorn. I've never heard this before, so but it's just very funny. So I'm gonna jump up first. I think it's important to communicate the great benefits, but also the great possibilities that the energy transition offers in terms of jobs, in terms of economic and also environmental sense, and highlight that there are already lots of great women working in this sector, and encourage many more to come, and make it clear that the energy transition will advance faster and more inclusively if we manage to attract more women to this field.
Thank you very much, Christine. Who feels ready? Claudia, maybe first.
Ja, jetzt fällt mir gerade noch von vorhin ein, wir haben ja gesagt, die Fridays for Future Bewegung besteht überwiegend aus jungen Frauen. Warum ist Klimaschutz nicht gleich Energiewende oder warum ist da das Interesse geringer? Es wäre sicherlich da nochmal ein Aspekt mit mehr Information, mit mehr Ansprache, mit mehr Vorbildfunktion, auch ganz gezielt auf solche junge Frauen zuzugehen und die vielleicht auch dann anzusprechen oder dafür zu gewinnen, wenn sie schon sich für den Klimaschutz aktiv einsetzen, weil passiv finden ja die meisten oder sind ja Frauen noch viel mehr im Klimaschutz dem positiv gegenüber gestimmt, aber aktiv vielleicht nochmal gerade diese jungen Frauen ansprechen, sich auch beruflich oder privat im Bereich der Energiewende zu engagieren. Das wäre vielleicht nochmal ein Punkt, den man angehen könnte, wo man noch einiges mehr tun könnte, als man heute tut.
Thank you, Claudia. Indeed, this active support, I fully support it. Katharina, to you.
Yeah, that's really difficult to point out one issue. What I have learned now in our discussion and today in this great conference is really to show very concrete examples, because we have some data, and maybe also what you have said, Claudia, it does not have to be such a big project. So really to meet the people where they are. So for example, some members of energy cooperatives and energy communities, and to have concrete activities like a webinar of Vibke only for women, like a training for interest, and like or networking with Fridays for Future. So it would to make it to implement activities on the level of energy communities.
Thank you very much, Katharina. Wiebke?
Ja, weil jetzt viele wichtige Sachen schon gesagt wurden, nehme ich jetzt einfach einen weiteren Aspekt noch oben drauf und dann vielleicht eher den mittelfristigen Aspekt, und zwar zu schauen, wie wir bei der nächsten Generation, bei denen, die jetzt Mädchen und Jungs sind, das hinbekommen können, dass da Geschlechterstereotype sich nicht mehr so festsetzen, wie es, finde ich, in den letzten Jahren fast noch wieder schlimmer geworden ist als vor einigen Jahrzehnten. Und wie wir einfach hinkriegen, dass da die Lust am Klimaschutz und damit auch an den erneuerbaren Energien einfach noch mehr kommt, und zwar auch bei Mädchen, und das besonders zu unterstützen. Das, finde ich, wäre ein Projekt von, weiß nicht, tollen Pixie-Büchern über endlich mal eine Ingenieurin in irgendeiner Vorabendserie und dann das Thema einfach hinbekommen, damit wir dann auch in ein paar Jahren, wenn die nächste Generation wir von Ingenieurinnen brauchen, da endlich ganz, ganz viele sind und wir das Thema dann voranbringen können.
Great. Thank you very much. I fully agree with the fact that we should show that this is a fun thing also to do. I have certainly enjoyed and learned a lot from this discussion we've had. I would like to thank you very much for your time and input. And I would like to also invite Stefan. I can see Stefan, I would invite you to join us. Maybe you want to say a few words about what has happened throughout the day.
Yes, well, thank you so much. It was a very, again, inspiring panel. I'm extremely happy about I think the discussion that we had today. I think that's been very helpful. I think some of you already heard in the morning the numbers that we presented, the study the study will be launched in June. The purpose of this symposium was to discuss the results of the study and give us some guidance for the next year. So we're continuing this project in the next year, and then exactly focus on what can be done to change that gender imbalance that we have in community energy in particular. So let me say from my side, a great thank you to everyone, to you, speakers of this wonderful panel, to all the speakers and moderators that we had. And I'm also very happy that we had, I'm Megel, but I think we managed quite well this time to have a big number of excellent female speakers here as well. To all those panelists that we had, also to our participants for being, some of them really being quite patient. I think some of you stayed with us since 9:30, European time, for many hours. Yeah, we certainly will, this webinar is recorded and you will have access to it right now, but we will also then make it better accessible and cut those the sessions so that it's easier for you if you want to listen again to some of those sessions. Some of the outcomes of the study you will already find here on our website, and there's the project website as well. You will also find the presentation with the numbers, and as I said, we're now going to write the paper which will be published in around 3 months from now. Thank you not only to all the people with us, all the great women and also some men that joined us today, but all the organizations that have joined us, that are supporting also the project. In particular, let me mention, of course, our partners from the Landesverband Erneuerbare Energien, Nordrhein-Westfalen. Madeleine has been with us today. Of course, also the Japan Community Power Association. And of course, our sponsors, the two foundations, Stiftung Umwelt und Entwicklung Nordrhein-Westfalen and the Foundation of the Savings Bank for International Dialogue. That is very important, of course. And last but not least, of course, a great thank you to our interpreters, which are not visible, but they're doing a great job. We're very grateful for them as well. So I thank you all and wish you, whatever time is where you are, a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, a great week anyway, and we'll certainly contact you again and keep you updated, and we look forward to staying in touch and getting your continuous input to this, I think, very important work of broadening renewable energy, the energy transition, make it, giving women a bigger role and making the whole renewable energy community, energy movement broader. Thank you so much.